Getting ready to kick off here for the 2022 NCAA Division I, II, and III Rowing Championships. I am going to get started this morning with the Division III second eights. We're looking at 2 heats on the water. I will give you the lane assignments. In lane 2, Ithaca. Lane 3, Bates. Lane 4, Tufts. Lane 5, Pacific Lutheran. In these heats, the top 2 boats will advance directly to the grand final. The remainder will move on to a repechage. So we have 2 heats coming up, and that would be for the second 8. Following that, we'll have the Division III first 8s. We're going to turn it over to the start line, where our announcers for the first part of this race, Lindsay Shoup and David Wyant, will be bringing you the racing action.
Thank you, Adrian. As we are on the race course here with our first race of the 2022 NCAA Championships, and as you set the field for us, it is the second 8s for Division III, 4 boats across. Top 2 will move through straight to the grand final and avoid the repechage round, the second chance qualifier. Good start here from the pink hats in lane 4, the jumbos from Tufts. My name is David Wyant. I'm in the commentary car on the wave attenuator here at beautiful Nathan Benderson Park, joined by my broadcast partner for the morning and probably the afternoon as well, Lindsay Shoup. And Lindsay, as they come through 250, it's a 3-boat race up front. Really, looks like a couple feet separating those 3 in lanes 2 through 4.
It does look like Bates may be jumping out ahead a little bit here as they go to lengthen out from their start sequence and get into the body of this race, where they've taken almost a deck here so that they can just put their nose out in front of the other crews, see if they can set a pace here. But it does look like, as this first 500 unfolds, that it is a 3-boat race for now for this first race of this 2022 NCAA Championships.
So it is the Bobcats from Bates, from Lewiston, Maine. It's just taking about a deck lead right now on both Tufts and the Bombers of Ithaca. As they come through and approach the sign at 500 meters, these are 2,000-meter races our entire weekend to contest these championships. And it is at 500, just a deck. A deck in these 8s is about 12 feet or so. So Bates, obviously this long tradition of D3 rowing, Bates having won the national championship many times, including last year, they are starting to assert themselves a little bit in that lane 3 position, but it is still literally dead heated between the jumbos and the bombers behind them. And again, the progression is you've got to be top 2 to move straight through to the grand final and not row an extra race. So all these heats will go through the progressions as they come, the Division I, II, and III that we have this morning. But this is an incredible race as they approach 750 between those 2 behind Bates. Bates now a half-length lead.
And as Bates lengthens out, they're lengthening out on the Tufts boat, but in the far lane, that is Ithaca, in lane 2, in those yellow hats out on the far side, who is looking to answer the Bates' call as they pass through that 750 meters. So they've pushed themselves out in front of Tufts, who's wearing the pink hats there. Again, that's Bates in the middle in the white hats, Ithaca on the far side in the yellow hats, and Tufts on the near side here in the pink hats. And as Bates goes to lengthen out, Ithaca is going with them. They are looking to also take a move, wanting to stick with them for as much as possible of this middle portion of this 2,000-meter race, because here in this body, that's the meat, that's the heart of the race, that really is where all the meters really show. All the training that you've done throughout the year, it really shows up in this middle base 1,000 of the 2,000-meter race. First 500 gets you up and off the line. Last 500 separates the winners from everybody else.
So it's still Bates as they come through the halfway point, 1,000 meters done. It is Bates by about a half a length over Ithaca. Ithaca has now moved out to almost 3/4 of a length advantage. Second place over third place Tufts. So Tufts is going to have to figure out how to at least maintain a speed that's competitive with Ithaca in this third 500, where it really starts to physically hurt these athletes more so than the first half of the race. And they're going to have to try to, if I'm the coxswain in the Tufts boat, I'm looking to my left, and I'm trying to just maintain an overlap with Ithaca, but it's going to be pretty difficult as you see Ithaca even starting to move on Bates out front, even starting to close the gap on Bates is Ithaca, and I think they are close to or have just broken the overlap on Tufts. Again, top two going to move through, 750 meters left in our 2,000 meter race course. This is heat one of the Division III second eights. It's Bates Bobcats, half a length over Ithaca. Ithaca Bombers with about a full length. So it's basically the bow ball of Tufts to the tip of the stern of the Ithaca Bombers right now. So again, Tufts in these last 700, 650 meters, they're going to have to find some speed to try to get in a qualifying position.
You could see about 250, 300 meters ago that it was Ithaca that decided they were going to take a move to make sure that they stayed in contact with Bates, who has set the pace from the very get-go off the very first 250 meters of this race. You can see that Ithaca had taken their rate up just a little bit to see if they could push into that lead, and that has allowed them to break open water. So no longer, if you look straight down the side of the race course, if you're along a perfect set of buoy lines, both Ithaca and Bates have broken clear water against Tufts, who is in a third place, solidly ahead of Pacific Lutheran, who is in fourth place currently. Again, the top two crews will go straight through to the grand final. Everyone else will head to the reps later this afternoon.
So we'll hand it to you, Adrian. It's Bates ahead of Ithaca, Tufts, and Pacific Lutheran. This is heat one of the Division III second eights.
And thank you, David and Lindsay, for bringing us that first part of that race. I have Bates clocked at 36.5 strokes a minute. Ithaca behind them also at a 36. And as Lindsay and David were talking about the different strategies that some of these boats may have as they're coming into these heats. So we looked at a pretty big push here from Ithaca earlier on, seeing if they could try to even up this match and get even with Bates. But Bates, I think, coming out here to make a statement. They want to get right out of the wire, looking to make a strong statement here. They're coming into this championship ranked third. Ithaca is the top ranked boat in the Division III contest, and then Tufts, an unranked crew. Pacific Lutheran currently ranked 13th in the nation. But the strategy as we come into this heat is, you know, perhaps Pacific Lutheran and Tufts at this point, knowing they're not one of those top two boats, conserving a little bit of energy for the reps later this afternoon. But look at Bates here as they wind it up. Final 250 meters for them, continuing to hold off a beautiful charge here by Ithaca as Ithaca continues to close the gap, coming into the final 10 strokes or so for these Division III second eights. It does look as if the Bobcats from Bates, as well as the Bombers of Ithaca, will be your top two boats advancing directly to the grand final. And now here comes Tufts. And then finally, Pacific Lutheran University. Pacific Lutheran, one of our automatic qualifiers. They're coming from the Northwest Conference Championships. Really nice showing at the WIRA Championships earlier this season at Lake Natoma. And we'll turn it back up over to the start here, but let me get you the lane assignments for heat number 2 of the Division III second eights. In lane 2, Worcester Polytechnic Institute, or WPI. Lane 3, Wellesley College. Lane 4, Williams. And lane 5, St. Mary's.
Thanks, Adrian. We are getting into position here at the start line. Same thing, 4 boats for 2 spots in the grand final in heat 2 of the Division III second eights. And what we are watching is basically these boats just sitting, getting their nerves out, thinking about their race, because We have beautiful flat water here at the start line. There's no adjustments being made by these crews because there's really no wind that is affecting any course from any of them. They're all just kind of sitting ready, getting themselves ready to think about what's going to happen in this race. And it's probably a couple of minutes until we're going to be on the race course with these 4 boats. So again, top 2 are going to move through. They're going to avoid that second chance qualifier, that extra race here at our 2022 NCAA Rowing Championships. This is Division III, second eights. And so Division III has 2 boat classes, the first eights and the second eights. And then we're going to see some 4s in both Division II and Division III as we move through our heats day at the 2022 NCAA Championships. Starting to see some of these women start to think about sitting ready, and having to qualify for the NCAA Championships is a big deal. And certainly some of these athletes have never been in an NCAA championship, others have, but this is it. Your whole season kind of comes down to this weekend, Lindsay, and you're sitting on the start line in your heat, and you know how important it is having to finish top 2 to move straight through, trying to get your nerves together, trying to get yourself mentally into it. What are the types of things that you're thinking as a rower in these boats?
Well, first of all, you said that some of these athletes may have more or less experience than others. Being here at the NCAA Championships in Lane 5, that's going to be the boat closest to us. St. Mary's out of Maryland is a relatively young program, only 5 or 6 years they've had that. So to be here already is a good showing for a very young program. And so whether it's your first time sitting at the start line or your 4th time sitting here at an NCAA start line, you're kind of doing similar things, taking a deep breath, do the basics really, really well. Whatever helps you focus in and dial into just you and your teammates. The other boats on the course don't matter. You can't do anything about them at this point. All you can do is lay down your best race, and the best way to do that is to focus on the person in front of you and think about the people behind you. And the beauty of racing eights is how many legs, hearts, heads, guts get to work together down the course. There is nothing like being in an 8, this large, powerful boat being guided by an intelligent coxswain out front who you're going to trust to make the right moves at the right time all the way down the course to hopefully get you where you want to be by the time the finish line comes.
So we're seeing all of the women now sitting ready, and that was because of the command of the starter. The starter in conditions like this, beautiful flat conditions, is going to pull the crews, meaning it's going to call out each crew starting with WPI. And here we go with Heat 2 of the Division III second eights. Really competitive start. Does look like WPI starting to move out. The engineers from Worcester starting to move out just a little bit. Trying to go with them are the Eefs of Williams College from Williamstown, Mass. Those 2 boats know each other pretty well, both from Massachusetts.
And it's Wellesley College there in Lane 3 that took off from the line with those blue and white stripe blade, that diagonal line that took off a little bit quicker than the other crews out of the start line. And it does actually look that we're already 250 meters into this race, just 1/8 of the way down. But Wellesley College, they look like they've actually already lengthened out to their rhythm. They've found a great base already that has allowed them to take nearly a half a boat length on the trailing crews, the next 2 trailing crews out of WPI on the far side of the race course. When I say far side, I mean farthest from the side of the finish tower. And then just inside them in Lane 4 is going to be Williams there. So it is Wellesley College setting the pace early on in the early portions of this 2,000-meter race. Second heat, Division III, second eights.
Yeah, Wellesley had a great season, and thanks for correcting me there, Lindsay, on who is out front. It is Wellesley by about 3/4 of a length. They had an awesome season. In fact, I think their first 8 beat Bates at the New England Championships. As they come through 500 meters, it's still about 3/4 of a length for Wellesley. The rowing is very long as you watch these women come through. Second place, I am going to give right now to the Eves of Williams, but we've got 3 boats from Massachusetts that are leading the field here. It is the St. Mary's Seahawks are sitting in 4th place, just a little bit off the pace. So we've got 3 boats connected, or maybe the connection has now been broken, as it looks like Wellesley took a move there and has actually broken the overlap on WPI. WPI is only sitting about 3 or 4 seats behind Williams. So WPI in a position to challenge Williams. Williams is trying to hang on to this overlap out front with Wellesley as they come through 750. This is a very competitive race. Again, top 2 are going to move through and not have to row in the repechage round. What I'm watching in this boat right in front of us from Williams, Lindsay, is it looks like they're at a very manageable cadence. And so we'll see if that comes into play as they move through. They're holding this overlap. It's basically the bow ball of Williams is right on the coxswain of the Wellesley boat. As I see the coxswain from Wellesley look over at that bow ball, she's probably saying, look, I want to drop that thing. I don't want to see it anymore. Give me some speed. But that's kind of where things stand with WPI about a half a length off of Williams.
And Wellesley College there, again, lengthening out their lead. They do come into this regatta ranked 2nd as of last week's CRCA coaches poll. And so for them, if I'm a coach, if I'm an athlete in this boat, this is the type of row that I want to see. I don't want to see a ton of length taken necessarily in 1 stroke, 2 strokes. It's this gradual, continual lengthening out of your lead over time that just gives you this fantastic sense of confidence as you come down the course. Now, of course, the rowers are the only ones who know how much more they have in the tank at this point, but if they continue to lengthen out the way that they are, just, again, very gradually down the course, that's going to put them in a great position moving straight through to the grand final, potentially, as long as they place top 2 in this second heat here. That would give them great confidence going into potentially the final.
So here come the engineers. I'm looking at WPI. I'm looking at that bow ball 2 over there. It's a dark boat, and they're starting to charge on Williams. Again, top 2 are going to move through. Wellesley at 1250 has open water on both Williams and WPI. WPI put on a distinct power move there, and they started to close the gap a little bit on Williams. Williams now is punching back, Lindsay, because I'm seeing Williams now kind of extend it back out to almost about a half a length. But as WPI, they are really fighting in this third 500 to get themselves up to potentially even with Williams to see what can happen in the last 500. I'm watching the coxswain in the WPI boat. She is catching a glance, probably every 5 strokes over to the right. She's saying, look, this is what we've got to do. You know, if I was in this position, I would be trying to find some momentum. Anything that we do, a little move, you start to gain on that boat, you got to make sure that the rowers know it, that they have the speed to track them down. So this is a great race going on behind Wellesley. Wellesley with 500 meters left is out front. A little bit of open water ahead of Williams and WPI.
You can see about 20 strokes ago that out there in lane 2, WPI did want to make a move to see if they could sneak into one of those top 2 positions. And what that creates is a secondary race between the next 2 boats that know there are only 2 spots that get to go through straight to the grand final, which could potentially put some pressure on our leaders, Wellesley College, coming into this last 500 meters of this Division III Second Eights Heat 2.
And thank you, David and Lindsay. So again, the race that we're really watching right now is for that 2nd or 3rd place position between WPI and Williams. WPI did close the gap between the 1,000-meter mark and the 1,500-meter mark. It was about a second separating Williams and WPI at the 1,000, and now it's about a half a second. But does WPI have enough left in the tank to make up that gap? Williams now coming in to their final 250 meters. Wellesley out in front. Again, they were the 2016 national champions. In 2018, they were 2nd. And here they are in 2022, the blue, again, hoping to make a statement, putting themselves out in front as one of the top Division III crews. But that race between WPI and Williams really heating up here. Does WPI have enough to even it up with Williams, maybe nab one of those spots in the grand final? No one wants to go to the reps. But here we go. go, WPI. It's going to come all the way down to the wire here. Taking a look out from the spectator area, your view is going to be looking at those two bow balls between Williams and WPI as they come into their final 10 strokes. That coxswain from the Williams boat looking across at WPI. There goes Wellesley crossing the line. And now here comes Williams. They will hold off WPI to garner one of those top two spots. Here is WPI coming in, and then finally St. Mary's from Maryland winding up their very first race at a national championship. Again, as Lindsay had said, a very young program, just in their 6th year. So to be able to come here and participate at the highest level of competition, what a testament to their program. Again, they were one of our automatic qualifiers coming out of the Mid-Atlantic Conference, doing a great job here as they come into the final strokes of this Division III second eights. And unofficially, we'll get those times for you. Wellesley crossing the line in 6:51, Williams in 6:57. Those are unofficial times. Moving over to the first eights for Division III, we'll have 2 heats coming up. We have a few minutes before the start of the first heat, but I'll go ahead and give you the lane assignments now. In lane 2, Tufts. Lane 3, Ithaca. Lane 4, WPI, and lane 5, St. Mary's.
Okay, here they come. This is Heat 1 of the Division III first eights. And you're going to see these same 8 teams. There's 8 teams here at the NCAA Championships contesting the Division III boat classes. And just to set the field again here, as we have a very competitive start, although we're seeing the Bombers of Ithaca and the Engineers of WPI moving out a little bit in the middle lanes. The far lane from us on the wave attenuator, the commentary car in the pink hats, is the Tufts Jumbos. And then right in front of us, closest to us, are the Seahawks of St. Mary's, Maryland. As they come through and approach 250, it is a deck and a seat for those gold hats of the Ithaca Bombers. And Lindsay, I saw it to my eye, I watched them lengthen out. I mean, it was like a very distinct length and move. And what we're talking about there is all of these boats are trying to take the boat from a dead stop to as fast as possible, as quickly as possible off the start line. And typically that means they're going to row a very high stroke cadence, or how many strokes per minute they're taking. And then at some point they have to shift it because they can't hold that stroke rating all the way down 2,000 meters. It was a very distinct shift for Ithaca. It looked very smooth, but going right with them continues to be the Engineers of WPI.
And as we were just speaking about them lengthening out, it did look like Ithaca in lane 3 there in those yellow hats lengthened a little bit earlier to their base rhythm that we mentioned previously. But it did also look like WPI stayed a little bit longer on their start sequence to make sure that they went with them, because being there in lanes 3 and 4, they are in the lanes that are technically the pole positions that would be the lanes for the crews that are intended to be the faster of the crews out of the 8 that are representing Division III here. But as we said that about WPI staying a little higher so that they could stay right with Ithaca, they lengthened out a little bit, and just as I say that, they picked it right back up again to make sure, again, that they're continuing to go with Ithaca. But all of the back and forth that lanes 3 and 4 have done, Tufts has stayed right there on the outside, just moving very methodically and very quietly, maintaining contact with WPI, who is in the red unisuits, sitting in currently 2nd place.
Yeah, the Jumbo's trying to hang in there. I have all 3 of these boats as they come through 750, all 3 that are out in front of St. Mary's at about 35, 36 strokes a minute. So it's pretty consistent through the field. It's still Ithaca. They have now a half a length ahead of 2nd place WPI. WPI is trying to break the overlap or get clear water between them and the Tufts Jumbos. They don't quite have it yet, does WPI. So in that Tufts boat, trying to hold or maintain an overlap with WPI is what they're going to want to do here for the next 500 meters or so, and then see maybe what they have left in the tank in the last 500. Again, the progression's the same. So top 2 are going to go to the grand final. So you got to be top 2 to avoid a 3rd race. As they come through 1,000 meters, where these boats stand, it's 3/4 of a length advantage out in front for Ithaca College ahead of WPI. WPI with a full length now, maybe a seat of open water back to 3rd place, which is the Tufts Jumbos. Tufts Jumbos with about a length and a half, 2 lengths of open water back to St. Mary's.
And as we mentioned, with the repechage coming for later this afternoon for the crews that don't place in the top 2, there aren't that many opportunities for crews at the collegiate level to line up on a buoyed course like this, to line up with this many crews all at the same time. So a lot of times, some of these crews may have raced each other during the season. Sometimes they don't race each other during the season. And so you have to do cross comparison, and that's kind of the best you can do until you have an opportunity like this to actually line up on the same course, bow ball to bow ball at the start line, to see who really has it in them. And here, because it is the NCAA championships, we should expect that the crews would be the most polished, have the best races of their season here, be the most together at this point. And speaking of being the most together, here we are setting ourselves up for the last 500 meters. And it is WPI in lane 4 who said, you know what, we want to push even farther into this and see if we can have an amazing closing 1,000, closing 500 of this 2,000 meter race. And no, we don't need to win the first 1,000. We need to win the whole 2K.
Yeah, WPI is the fastest boat on the water right now, and they are really closing. The gap up front on Ithaca is WPI. Ithaca's lead right now is down to about 18 feet, and it just keeps dwindling. As they come through 500 meters to go, you're gonna see a beautiful shot. It is WPI still closing the gap every time they drop in the water on Ithaca. It's gonna be almost dead level at 500 to go. Adrian, as we pass it off to you, WPI with just a monstrous move over the last 100 meters. They may now be in front of Ithaca, and these two boats are well out clear of both the Tufts Jumbos and the Seahawks of St. Mary's.
Based on the body language of that WPI crew, you could see that coxswain must have been having fun this whole way down this course, calling moves, calling togetherness, calling for more speed out of that crew.
And absolutely, WPI on a tear here to see if they can even it up between themselves and Ithaca. Looking at the timing, WPI in both the second 8s and in this 8 had the fastest third 500 time. For those of you who know rowing, know that that is very, very difficult to do. That third 500, that's the delimiter. That's what separates out the fitness levels, the motivation. That is the pain cave right there, that third 500. And WPI just really making a huge statement there, showing their fitness, showing that they want to be here and want to be on that national stage. They were runners-up in 2019, the engineers were, and here they are taking it to that top-ranked crew, Ithaca. Ithaca very, very savvy racing here as they continue to just barely hold off WPI. Again, at this point, both of those crews comfortably in the grand finals, but let's race for lanes. Let's make this a race all the way down the race course, wire to wire, and that's exactly what these two programs are doing. Tufts still in third, St. Mary's still in fourth. Looking strong, just not quite able to match the speed of these top two boats. But as we come down to the line, this is going to be a photo finish, ladies and gentlemen. I am not going to make a prediction on who crossed that line first. It was WPI. There is a 1/10 of a second celebrating out between those two crews, just barely. WPI gets that bow ball across, and that's literally about the amount of the boat that is going to equal that 1/10 of a second. So 641.5 for WPI, 641.6 for Ithaca, and then here comes Tufts, and then now St. Mary's. So these are just heats. Can't wait to see what the grand finals will look like for the Division III boats. But officially, it will be WPI and Ithaca moving on to the grand finals later this afternoon. Tufts and St. Mary's will return for the repechage. All right, and as we ready ourselves for the final heat of the morning for the Division III crews, again, this is the first 8 for these programs. We're looking at 4 teams on the water. In lane 2, Williams. Lane 3, Wellesley. Lane 4, Bates. And lane 5, Pacific Lutheran.
Okay, getting ready for Heat 2 of the Division III First Eights. And we have a rematch here from the New England Championships between Wellesley and Bates. As I told you, Wellesley bested Bates at the New England Championships. I think it's the first time Bates has lost that race in a while. So I think we've got a little grudge match going on in this heat. And you've also got the Eves of Williams up in lane 2, furthest from us. And then closest to us is Pacific Lutheran, the Lutes, as everybody is very close to sitting ready. I think I heard the command of 2 minutes about a minute ago, so we're going to see everybody dropping their blades in the water, and we'll be on the race course momentarily. Beautiful flat water here at Nathan Bederson Park in Sarasota, Bradenton, Florida. Here they come. This is Heat 2 of the Division III First Eights boat class, and it's the last of our Division III heats this morning. Good clean start. Everybody nice and clean. Didn't see really any missed strokes from any of these boats, and everybody is nice and tightly packed. Those two middle boats are starting to move out just a little bit. It's Wellesley and Bates. Wellesley with maybe a seat lead on Bates early, super early, 150 meters in. Beautiful water, Lindsay, and they are going at it as we start to see these boats start to lengthen. Wellesley just lengthened.
Wellesley came off the start with a much higher stroke rate than a couple of the other crews, and now they are just lengthening. They did stay a little bit higher with their stroke rate. You can see the blades striking the water a little bit more often than the other crews, which means either that was in the plan, that was part of the plan all along, or they said, hey, we're going to hold it a few extra strokes. Maybe that was a call the coxswain made. We're going to stay high for a couple extra just to make sure that we put our nose out in front, because even though this may be a rematch of the New Englands, this is the NCAA championship, so this is the big show. This is the final races of the season to see who's going to win that national title. And it is lane 3 with Wellesley College, who's decided to be about a deck out in front of the other crews. But again, it's a full 2,000-meter race. So there is some confidence gained by having your nose out in front early, but it's that continuing to stretch out over time, or at least maintain what you're doing, that really keeps that confidence growing and growing down the course. And as we cross into 500 meters, it is Williams in lane 2 who has decided to answer the call and wants to make sure that they stay in this race, because again, the top 2 advance to the grand final, and everyone else will have an additional race in between now and the grand final. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. It's 3 boats across right now. Pacific Lutheran, the Lutes out of Pacific Lutheran are the only crew that's a little bit off the pace here, but these 3 boats are stroke for stroke, not quite bow ball to bow ball, but getting close to it as we're well into the middle of this race.
I looked away and I looked back, and all of a sudden the Eves were right there. This is an unbelievable race that we have here in Heat 2 of the Division III First Eights, as you've got Williams maybe about a seat behind, basically dead level. Whoever's in the water is in the lead at 750 between Bates and Wellesley. So it's 3 boats across. You can throw a blanket over them. I'm watching these bow balls charge. Again, every time somebody drops in the water, the bow ball charges out just a little bit, and then the other ones catch up. It is maybe Bates by a seat, and then it's basically dead level between Williams and Wellesley right now as they approach the halfway point. So this one is going to shape up to be an incredible second half with all 3 of these boats right here. Who's going to make the first major move is really what I'm going to look for, especially in the third 500 meters as they approach 1,000 meters. And I'm sure you're getting beautiful pictures from the drone as well as the stationary cameras that we have here at Nathan Bederson Park for these NCAA championships. You're going to see as they come through 1,000, it is Bates now by maybe 2 seats, and just look at it. It's dead level between Williams and Wellesley.
And as we cross into this 1,000, the question is, yes, most crews have some sort of plan. They might have a move that they're going to take. That's either a focus for technical reasons to make sure the crew moves more efficiently, or it's a 10 where you push a little bit more. But when you're going max, how can you give more max? Well, it looks like Bates decided just after the 1,000 that they were going to take the rate up just a little bit, maybe give it a little bit of a move to see if they could stretch it out a little bit more. And it does look as though Wellesley in lane 3 is starting to inch out little by little, because the 1,000-meter mark is kind of like a reset point. Your legs are tired there, but you really kind of spend the first 1,000 meters killing some time, because the second half of the race, who's going to dig in who has been more efficient so far is the crew that is going to have more to give, more speed as the race continues to unfold in the second half.
These coxswains in the Wellesley and Williams boats are so dug into this race. This is going to be one that they remember no matter how it finishes for the rest of their lives. It is stroke for stroke. It continues to be. Every time Wellesley gets about a seat, Williams just somehow grabs it back. It is still an amazing race as they approach 500 meters to go. It's the Bobcats of Bates out in front, half a length ahead of Wellesley. Wellesley right now with a deck over Williams. So this is kind of the inflection point as far as I'm concerned. Can Williams stay with Wellesley as they come into the last 500 meters? Again, only 2 spots to move through to that grand final. We're going to hand it to you, Adrian. What a race. You got 3 connected boats up front. It's Bates ahead of Wellesley and Williams.
And this is exactly the kind of race that you want to see in a heat. The most competitive programs here just going after each other, just barely a second separating between Bates and Wellesley, between Wellesley and Williams a second. And at the 1,000, it was even tighter. But looks like Wellesley is going to have the upper hand here coming into this third 500. They're looking at about a 4-seat advantage over Williams. But Williams pushing their stroke rating up to see if they can maybe take a little bit of that lead away in the sprint section here of this final 500. Again, it is Bates up in front. Bates looking very, very strong with a punishing stroke rate of 38 strokes a minute for most of the body of their race. So that's really working for them. That high stroke rate, that could really do some harm for some crews if they're not confident in their fitness levels. But Bates, obviously, they are a multiple champion here. They are an excellent crew with the coaches that just know how to put it all together at the right time. Bates proving that they are one of those programs. So again, they are being pushed so hard, though, by Wellesley and Williams that, you know, they have watched their lead shrink just a little bit coming into these final 250 meters. Look at Wellesley here down the center of the lane. They have taken that stroke rate up now at 40 strokes a minute. Bates also 40 strokes a minute. They are almost dead even. Williams fading back to that third place position, but coming to the line again, just as we saw in the previous race, almost a photo finish in these final strokes. Bates holding on to that lead. Wellesley with that second place spot. Williams in third, and here comes Pacific Lutheran. So less than a second separating out Bates and Wellesley at that finish line. And again, this is just a heat. Wait until the grand finals. It is going to be hot. All right, and we're going to turn our attention back up to the start for the first of 4 heats for the Division I first 8s. In lane 1, Southern California. Lane 2, Pennsylvania. Lane 3, Texas. Lane 4, Washington. And let's start that again. Lane 1 will be USC. Lane 2, Pennsylvania. Lane 3, Texas. Lane 4, Washington. And lane 5, closest to shore, Rutgers.
Okay, you're on the race course with Heat 1 of the Division I First Eights. And again, the progression is that top two are going to move through to the next level. So we're going to have a lot of really interesting heats here, Lindsay, I think, especially because there has been so much competitive racing throughout the NCAA in all the divisions. And so even though you've got like top-ranked Texas in this race, you also have 8th-ranked Washington and 9th-ranked Penn. So as we get back up and we get with these crews, we'll let you know where they stand. But this is it. I mean, this is the heats at NCAAs, and you got to put it out on the line, especially because you want to move straight through to the semifinal. As
you mentioned, David, there are kind of a lot of unknown quantities this year. There are enough crews out here that have beaten one another throughout the season and then made it to their respective conference championships and then shuffled who won where. And so the time delay between conference championships and now is at least usually about 2 weeks' time. And during that course of time, teams go home and they reshuffle things. They regroup. If they make it to the NCAA championships, they go, how can we find even more speed? So that will be the interesting thing to see unfold here as the weekend progresses, because different crews maybe are going to stay the same speed while others have maybe found new gears. And as we're talking about that, right now, as we cross into this second 500 of the race, it is Washington that has decided to be out in front right now ahead of Texas. But I have to say, Texas, having come through their automatic qualifier as well to be the top-ranked team here, defending national champions here, I imagine they have a very mature race plan that they're comfortable being down. But that might also be a strategy for Washington, because Texas maybe isn't used to being down. So maybe try and get inside their heads that way.
Well, they're
your race.
Yeah, they're absolutely
pull them
not
out of
used
theirs.
to being down. They're 51-0 over the last 2 years in this boat class. So if Washington is able to hang on here, and we're only 750 meters in, they will be doing something that nobody has done in 2 years, which is beat Texas in this boat class. But it's Washington right now, only by a deck. Here comes Texas as they start to find a little bit more speed. That coxswain, Rachel Rain, looking over, and she's letting her women know in the Texas boat, yep, you're taking about a foot every time you drop in the water. And it's getting real close up front. It's about 5 feet right now for Washington over Texas. These two boats have broken the overlap on the rest of the field. Third place is Penn right now. They're in lane 2. And then I would say fourth place is Rutgers in lane 5, with fifth place Southern California up there in lane 1. So those are your 5 boats. As they come through 1,000 meters, it's still a lead for the Huskies of Washington, but here comes Texas.
It is worth mentioning here at this point that, yes, this is the NCAA championship. It is the 2022 NCAA championship, the varsity 8 for the Division I. A lot of these athletes have experience internationally as well. So when it comes to mature racing, you will definitely see that happen on the race course this weekend. Some of these athletes have even competed for their respective countries' Olympic teams, let alone the national teams at World Championships. So to come together from all over the world, you are literally seeing some of the best rowing that's happening right now, right here in South Florida.
So it's a deck now at 1250 for Texas. And what we saw last year in this boat class, they won the national championship, but they were not in the lead until really the last 700 or so meters, really the last 500 meters when they started to assert themselves. And out there with them last year was Stanford and Washington. So Washington led to the halfway point, and now in this third 500, every time Texas drops in the water, they're moving out a little bit on Washington. And it looks like the speed in that Texas boat is going to be probably hard to match for Washington at this point, to my eye, Lindsay, because the momentum in Texas is just tremendous.
You could see the power in the blades. As soon as the blade drops in, it drops in long, it drops in aggressively, and there's a push on it. You know, the first time my parents ever watched me race, they said, oh, it's so graceful. It might look together, it might look graceful. That's the point. They're disguising how much effort they're really putting into it. They are pushing hard, they are working hard, but they are doing it together, and that's why Washington and Texas are the two boats that are out in front right now.
So we'll give it to you, Adrian. Out in front, it's 3/4 of a length for Texas over Washington. Open water back to Penn, Rutgers, and Southern California.
And exactly, that is a slow burn for the Longhorns of Texas. Washington with a really hot start, but, you know, having to just do their job. They've got to get into the semifinals without wanting to go to the reps, and it looks as if Washington and Texas, again, just leaving nothing on the table in this very first heat of the Division I eights for the day. So Texas just kind of ticking it along at both boats. Texas and Washington clocked at 34.5, 35 strokes a minute. Behind them, we've got Pennsylvania. This is their first time here at the National Championships as a team and ranked very high in the program. So really just a great job, a testament to their coaching staff to get them here and through the season. Behind them, we've got Rutgers. Rutgers with a good showing. This is their third time at the National Championship. They made a grand final last year in this Division I Varsity 8. And I think that that is possible. They're going to have to come out of the reps, but that is a very, very strong crew here. But here we go with Texas. It is now open water for them over Washington, just maybe by about a half of a seat. Washington now crossing. Those are your top two boats moving on to the AB semifinals. And now very, very close here between Southern California and Rutgers. Pennsylvania crossing in third. It will be Rutgers in fourth, and then Southern California in the fifth place position. Okay, and we are just 3 minutes away from the start of Heat 2 for the Division I First Eights. Again, to remind you of the progression, the top two boats advance direct to the AB semifinals. The remainders will move on to the reps later this afternoon. We have 5 boats on the course again. In lane 1, Gonzaga. Lane 2, California. Lane 3, Princeton. Lane 4, Michigan. And lane 5, Duke.
All right, Adrian set the field for you. This is Heat 2 of the Division I First Eights, and should be another exciting one again. Top two are going to move through to the A semifinals. So you want to be top two, so you don't have to row in an additional race or repechage race to try to get into those A-B semifinals. Princeton coming in ranked number 2 in this boat class. One of the stories that we have been talking about, Lindsay, is the resurgence of the Ivy League this year. And you're going to see Princeton, you're going to see Brown and Yale at these championships, and they're all very fast. And so we'll see what happens with Princeton in this heat, but they come in ranked 2nd in the boat class. They're in lane 3, and they are going to be flanked by California, who's ranked 10th, and Michigan, who's ranked 7th.
Yeah, we have noticed over the last several years that the large public schools have had a solid representation here at the national championships, but it is private schools that have, at least in the top 10 or so, have really resurged and asserted a little bit of dominance this year. So as the weekend unfolds, who will come out on top? Will it be private schools? Will it be Ivy League? What portion of the country are people coming from? Who's going to show the speed? Sitting here at the start line, we are using these start systems this morning. You sit at the start, you're waiting for your coxswain, you're focused on your boat, and then you hear the announcer say, arming system, and this boot comes up out of the water. It's a very strange sound. Then you push your bow ball into it. That's to help make sure everybody is dead on even at the start, because at the start, it's a tie.
Here we go, 5 boats across, 2 spots in the A-B semifinal up for grabs. It's Heat 2 of the Division I First Eights. Trying to press out early is Princeton in lane 3 in that gold boat.
Rowing very high.
Yep, but everybody is still there. So we'll see what happens as they start to come out of the high strokes and settle in. But it's still Princeton early here with a very quick start. Clearly, they have put some emphasis on that start. And you're right, they were very high. And they have not yet settled out, but it's gotten them a lead of about 3 seats here. Ahead of going with them is Michigan and Cal in those lanes flanking them. Everybody's still in it, and everybody's still overlapped at 250.
At 250 meters, you can see Princeton lengthening out, never settle, always lengthen. To be sure, these athletes are going hard the whole time. Anything that is in their mind that they're maybe taking a break, nah, it's not happening. They're just getting more length per stroke, breathing more in between each stroke. I remember our national team coach said to us one time, breathe early the way that you need to later on. That way you set your rhythm very early on, because as the speed increases, as these fields get more and more competitive, year after year after year, and the rowing gets better and better, and the athletes fitter and fitter, it's how efficient can I be? How much energy, physical and mental, can I conserve to go as fast as possible? And it is Princeton crossing through that first 500 meters who says we want to come out and make a statement right now and race our race, see if we can get even a little bit faster since our conference championships. As we progress through the weekend, can we find more speed? Because we know we need more speed.
Yep, Princeton half a length right now at 650, ahead of Cal. Cal with a deck over Michigan. Then in 4th place is Duke. Duke's bow ball is right on about the 7-woman or 6-woman in the Michigan boat. And then it is Gonzaga on the far side. The Zags with an overlap on, it looks like only Duke at this point. 750. And it's still about a half a length, maybe a 6-seat advantage for Princeton out in front of Cal. The Cal stroke woman, Angela Szabo, knows the race course really well, and we'll see if that comes into play. But it's Lucy Coven.
Why does she know the race course well there, David?
She's from Sarasota. It's Lucy Coven really making that Princeton boat go, though. And I have all these boats at about 37 strokes a minute, so it's very competitive pacing. And it probably will remain there until they get into those last 500 meters, but it's still right on 6 seats. The bow ball of the boat from California is right on the hands of the 6-woman in the Princeton boat when she gets up to take a stroke as they come through 1,000.
You can see Cal lengthening out as well, looking for a little bit more speed, more efficiency, stroke per stroke, as they cross into the second half of this race. They have clearly taken at least half a boat there on 3rd place, now 3rd placed Michigan, as they are looking to make sure that they want to take one of those top 2 spots and avoid that rep. That's going to help save your legs a little bit over the weekend because it is a 3-race progression to the final, heats, semifinals, and finals here in this Division I first 8s. If you don't come in top 2 in one of these heats, you must go through a rep, which will add another 2,000 meters plus warm-up and cool-down to your legs and lungs on the weekend.
So it's just a comfortable lead. It's the same lead that really has been there for the last 500 meters for Princeton. It's about 6 seats, maybe 7 now as they come through 1250, 750 meters to go. It's Princeton out in front of California. California is looking to possibly start breaking that overlap on Michigan. But I'm watching the California coxswain.
Take it up.
And she's really just looking at Princeton at this point. I'm not watching her look over at Michigan too much. And Michigan is, you know, a full length off the pace of California now. California, you were seeing them sort of try to make a move, try to close the gap a little bit on Princeton. It's very, very controlled in the Princeton boat. It seems like whatever California does doesn't really mean anything to Princeton at this point.
Well, it's 2 slightly different styles there. They're both tidy crews. California is a little bit longer up front, a little bit lower with the stroke rate. Princeton's a little bit higher, a little bit more aggressive in the back half of the stroke. And so that does mean that California would have room to potentially take it up if they shorten up their stroke just a little bit, but make sure the blades continue to go straight to the water. So they might be able to rev it up a little bit more in these closing 500 meters of this race.
We'll give it to you, Adrian. Out front, it remains Princeton ahead of Cal and Michigan.
And indeed, Princeton with that very solid lead with just a punishing stroke rate. I have them clocked at this point almost 40 strokes a minute, which those of you that might not be as familiar with the details of rowing, that is almost the speed that you would take at the very start of a race. So these guys not even into their sprint phase yet, but Princeton, they did the same thing at the Ivy Leagues where they just jumped out in front, held it wire to wire, and they're doing that here just in front of Cal, but they have actually widened the gap between themselves and California now to a full boat length. So Princeton stern deck sitting on the bow ball of the California boat, and California continuing to walk away from Michigan, solidifying their spot in that AB semifinal. So Michigan in third, lots of open water above them between themselves and Duke. Duke with open water over Gonzaga. So Gonzaga here as your automatic qualifier from the WCC, Duke coming out of the ACC, and then here's the Pac-12 and the Ivy League. I mean, we've got everyone represented. And here comes Princeton. It'll be their bow first across the line, followed by California. And now here comes Michigan. And then Duke winding it up for their final strokes, and then Gonzaga. And we'll move it right back up to the start so I can set your lanes. In this heat, this is heat number 3 for the Division I first 8s. We've got 6 boats on the course. In lane 1, Boston University. In lane 2, Oregon State. In lane 3, Stanford. In lane 4, Ohio State. In lane 5, Syracuse. And lane 6, Jacksonville.
Here we are at the start of the Division 1/8's Heat 3. So we take it off the start line. We had a little delay there at the front. Thinking, imagine if you're sitting at the start line, it's dead silent. This is your heat. You know that top 2 go straight through to the semifinal, to the next round. Everybody else goes to the rep. What are you thinking in your mind? You're taking a breath, maybe check your oar lock, you're getting comfortable on your seat, and then you get ready to go. You dial into the coxswain's words, because as soon as the horn goes and the lights go, off you go for 2,000 meters as hard as you really can, to the best of your ability within your hull. Trying to make sure that you aren't thinking about anything that anyone out there, anyone else out on the course is doing. And as to be expected, it's Stanford in lane 3 who has stayed internally the most in their plan and have set themselves, they've set the pace early, and they've set themselves out in front by nearly a half length here in just the first 300 or so meters of the race. They're still high, they've just lengthened out potentially to 1 first lengthen, maybe they'll lengthen again or keep this for the body of the race as their base. We don't know yet, but as the race continues to unfold and the rest of the crews in the field continue to want to hang on to Stanford as they lengthen out, they are going to potentially push one another and push into that early Stanford lead.
We have quite the race going on as they approach 500 meters. It is Stanford out in front. Derek Burns' women have about 3/4 of a length on the Buckeyes of Ohio State. So it's Stanford. They came in, they won Pac-12, so they automatically qualified. They finished second in this boat class last year in that dramatic finish that we had, where it was Texas, Stanford, Washington in that order.
There's another length.
So it is, yep, and they did just kind of lengthen again there at 500 meters. So it's Stanford out in front. The Stanford coxswain kind of focused on the bow deck of Ohio State and trying to break the overlap here. So it's Ohio State sitting in second place, and then it is extremely close between Syracuse in lane 5 and Oregon State in lane 2. We have 6 boats across, but only 2 are going to move straight through to the AB semifinal. Right now, it is a lot of control through 750 by the Cardinal.
And with the efficiency set in their rhythm early, as David mentioned, right around 500 meters, it almost looked like they lengthened again, which allowed them to kind of zip up their technique, make sure they really are moving together, because first and foremost, you have to move together. It doesn't really matter if one person in the boat wants to push and go faster at some given moment. The coxswain, plus all the miles and meters of practice that you've put into it, that really keeps you together. Once your rhythm is there, once you know all those legs are pushing, then your coxswain can ask you for a little bit more. And after they did create a little more length and therefore a little more efficiency in what they were doing, it's allowed them to nearly just about break free of current second place Ohio State, who is also an automatic qualifier in this heat, along with Boston University and Jacksonville being 2 other automatic qualifying teams, having taken the top positions in their respective conferences.
Yep, so Ohio State won the Big Ten championship, but right now they are trailing Stanford by open water. Stanford out in front, 2 seats of open water at about 1,100 meters. It is Ohio State with open water back to Syracuse. Syracuse maintaining about 1/3 of a length over the Beavers of Oregon State. Those are your top 4. In 5th place is Boston University in lane 1. 6th place is Jacksonville University in lane 6. As they come through 1250, I'm still watching that coxswain in the Stanford boat, Caroline Rickson. She continues to look back at Ohio State about every 5th stroke, and she just wants more. She wants more of a gap. She wants to lay down a time. She wants to pace these women in the Stanford boat away from Ohio State as much as possible. She is not letting them get off the gas, and that is what continues to happen. Every time they drop in the water, they're just taking a couple of inches on Ohio State. Ohio State still with clear water back to Syracuse.
The rarity that we mentioned earlier, getting to line up 6 boats, 5 boats across, 6 boats across, that really is rare throughout the collegiate season. And so getting on a course like this, you're making sure that you are also practicing your speed. Can we, again, find more speed by laying down another piece, another race? Take them one day at a time, one step at a time, one race at a time. Okay, execute my warm-up. Next, get into the start. Next, execute the race. Once each of these crews crosses the finish line, I'm sure they are going to regroup and go, okay, how can we find more speed for our next step? But right now, the next step is the last 500 meters. And is anyone going to wind it up and really practice the sprint at this point, even though it is Ohio State and Stanford still out way in front for those 2 spots to go straight through to the AB semi?
I'll hand it to you, Adrian.
And as these crews come into the spectator area, I do have to say how great it is to be able to see so many spectators here. Last year was a pretty silent championship, so lovely to have all these fans on the shoreline. So let's bring it for Stanford as they come down to their final strokes, hitting those red buoys, final 250 meters. They are making it look easy. So high level of fitness. Again, they were the Pac-12 champions with an easy, almost 6-second lead over the rest of the field. And doing the same here, well out in front, lots of open water between themselves and Ohio State. We've got Ohio State looking at an open water lead over Syracuse with Oregon State just off of the stern deck of Syracuse. Back to them, it will be Boston University and Jacksonville right there as well. So just kind of a parade of boats as we come into the finish, but Stanford leaving nothing on the table as they wind it up, and it will be their bow first crossing the line here in this Division I first 8. Absolutely no question that they are going to be one of the top dominating crews here, as well as Ohio State, again, a multiple national champion in the past. And then here we have Syracuse. Great to see them here at these national championships, as well as Oregon State. Again, it's been a couple of years. And now Boston University, they were your automatic qualifier coming out of the Patriot League. And then Jacksonville as well. First time for them here since 2018, after a couple of hard years for their program. So coming back on top in their conference and coming out to race at the highest level. Unofficial times coming out of this heat, 6:11 for Stanford, followed by 6:16 for Ohio. Those were unofficial times. Lane 5, Virginia. And lane 6, Rhode Island. Top 2 boats will advance to the A and B semifinals, the remainder moving on to the reps later this afternoon.
Getting ready to go momentarily with Heat 4 of the Division I First Eights. Could have another exciting one here. 6 boats across here at Nathan Benderson Park. Beautiful flat water at the start line. And with these 6 boats across, you've got Brown, 4th ranked, Yale, 5th ranked, obviously familiar with one another. You also have SMU and Virginia that are ranked 12th and 13th. So I suspect this one's going to be quite competitive as they come down. Northeastern is going to be furthest from us up in lane 1, and Rhode Island closest to us in lane 6. As the boots come down, we've got 6 boats going here on the race course, this 2,000-meter World Championship race course at Nathan Benderson Park. And who wants to get that early lead? It looks like lane 4 trying to push out. That's Yale. And going with them as well is Brown. So obviously these two Ivy League crews that know each other extremely well. Brown finishing just ahead of Yale at the Ivy League Championships, but both boats just behind Princeton. And early on here, it is Brown trying to go, and they have maybe about an 8-foot lead on both Yale and SMU.
I was going to say it's SMU that after those first 10, 15 strokes or so off the start has decided to be one of those front-running crews right off the get-go. Notorious for high stroke rate is Brown there in the middle. So for Yale and Brown to get off very quickly initially in the early portions of this race is to be expected. Those higher stroke rate, shorter strokes help these boats get off from a dead stop up to speed, because when you think about it, it's 9 bodies at a dead stop plus about 200 pounds of a boat. That's a lot of weight that you have to get up and moving before you can lengthen out to your most effective, efficient rhythm. It's get up to speed, stay up to speed, stay up to speed, stay up to speed. Every now and again, maybe a trailing crew is going to try and poke a hole in the leaders, see if they can take them out of their game, out of their race plan, out of their own lane, to see if they can kind of eat into that lead. And right now, as David, you mentioned earlier, it is those kind of 4 middle lanes, lanes 2, 3, 4, and 5. It's SMU, Brown, Yale, and Virginia setting an early pace here, with Northeastern being in 5th place at this point, and Rhode Island there in the lane closest to us in 6th place.
I love being this close to the racing because you can just kind of focus on things. So I have my eyes trained on the 2 coxswains of these 2 lead boats. It's Yale and Brown. It's Yale by maybe about 5 feet over Brown right now as they approach 750. Those 2 coxswains are they're absolutely in this race. They're kind of crouched in. They're not moving, which is what they should be doing from a physics perspective. They're nice and wedged in there. And you see the Yale coxswain. Every once in a while, she's just kind of sneaking a glance, but it's almost even hard to tell that she's doing it unless you're looking right at her. It's Yale now with maybe 7 feet, so maybe they've moved out just a little bit on Brown. There's about a deck advantage possibly for Yale over Brown. These 2 boats are trying to break the overlap on SMU and Virginia. SMU probably maintains about a half a length advantage for 3rd place over 4th place Virginia at the moment. And as they approach the halfway point, it's still this grudge match up front. As they do race throughout the season, we've talked about it, you don't get a 6-boat across race sometimes until you get to NCAAs. But in the Ivy League, they're probably racing dual races, sometimes 3 boats. And it is dead level here at halfway as Brown starts to try to get back into the mix with Yale.
And these 2 crews, Brown and Yale, have traded places a couple of times already in terms of who's going to be first, who's going to be second, who's going to be first, who's going to be second. And it is Yale who jumped out early initially, and then Brown jumped out ahead, then Yale is now back out in front. But they are going to be bow ball to bow ball all the way down, because they know that it's top 2 to advance to semis, but we've also mentioned that it's solidifying your race plan. Can we find more speed at this point? They also can see, the rowers can see, but the coxswains can't necessarily, that SMU is still biding some time right there. They look pretty comfortable in what they're doing. They're sitting kind of low in the boat, just very upright, but not really, maybe they have room to go. Maybe they have a little more speed in them to see if they can close that open water gap. But again, if they don't, it'll be to the reps for them along with everyone else in this race, because again, top 2 go through to the semi. Everybody else will have another race on them.
So at the halfway point, it was a deck for Yale, and then immediately at the halfway point, Brown basically took away that lead in about 5 strokes, and right now it's Brown out in front by about a third of a length over Yale. It is SMU, as you mentioned, Lindsay, staying tough here, but there is open water between Yale and SMU. As I watch the SMU boat, it is extremely controlled. And it does look like, to my eye, if they have more energy in the tank, that they may be able to try to see if they can track down Yale or Brown. But right now, with 500 meters left, as we pass it off to you, Adrian, it is almost now a half-length advantage for Brown over Yale. So Brown really owned that third 500 over Yale, and then it's open water back to SMU, Virginia, and then Northeastern and Rhode Island.
All right, an excellent call there. Great racing up front between Brown and Yale. Again, they just raced each other a couple weeks ago at the Ivies, and it was a three-way tie for first. Princeton obviously taking that win by virtue of their finish in the 8. Brown in second, Yale in third. And again, Brown maybe a little bit more patient through the third 500 as they have overtaken Yale for the lead. Brown with that signature high stroke rate. I have them clocked upwards of 39 strokes a minute. That is a hallmark of their program, to come down the race course just at a furious stroke rating, and it works for them. So here they are pulling to almost a full-length lead over Yale coming into these final 250 meters. Again, these crews battling each other all season, very familiar with their race tactics of their closest competitor here. But look at SMU. This is their second straight appearance, SMU finishing 11th overall in the team totals from last year. They are really putting on a late charge here to see if they can maybe catch up with that Yale boat, sneak into those semifinals, but it might be a little bit too late for them, as Yale, sensing that they've got a little bit of a threat there coming into the finish. It will be Yale for that second spot, Brown taking the win, and then SMU in third. We've got Virginia crossing now. And then it will be Northeastern and Rhode Island to round out these heats of the Division I first 8s. And unofficial times for those top 3 crews: 6:13 for Brown, followed by Yale with 6:15, SMU in 6:18. So unofficially, both Brown and Yale moving on to the semifinals, and the remainder will move on to the reps later this afternoon. And just as I mentioned, Brown, one of the few crews that's been invited to the national championships every single year of their existence. This is the 25th straight bid for Brown at a national championship, and they also hold the lead for the most NCAA crowns with 7. So here they are looking for their 8th. We're going to move it back up to the start. The racing never stops here at Nathan Benderson Park. Beautiful weather, beautiful water. We're going to move it over to the Division I second 8s, again with 4 heats, and same progression. The top 2 boats will advance to the AB semifinal. The remainder moving on to the repechage. In lane 1, Southern California. Lane 2, Southern Methodist University. Lane 3, Texas. Lane 4, Michigan. And lane 5, Oregon State.
Division I second eights. Good clean start, 5 boats across. Same progression, top 2 are going to go to the AB semifinal automatically. And then the remaining boats will try in the repechage round to get to those AB semifinals, where there will be fewer spots up for grabs. Everybody with a good clean start. You know, all of these boat classes, so at the Division I level, we have 3 boat classes at our championships. And all 3 boat classes, the first 8, the second 8, and the first 4, earn points for the team. And there's also obviously a team national championship that is up for grabs. As I'm looking at these bows, it is super close. Maybe it's lane 3 Texas right now at 250, but only by a couple of feet over SMU and Michigan. And all the way up in lane 1, also in there, is Southern California. Everybody in the mix here, even from Texas, who is clearly in the lead at this point by about a deck, back to the boat in 5th place, Oregon State. It's only about a half a length.
Absolutely. As we cross into getting about 300, maybe 400 meters into this race, it's still full contact, which is something that we haven't seen yet in most of the races so far. But if Texas's second varsity 8 has a plan similar to their first varsity 8, we can expect them to pick up speed as they go down the course, get the boat up and off the line, and then potentially in the second half of the race kind of reset, regroup, and see if they can take a little more length. But considering that Texas is the #1 ranked crew here, sitting in that lane 3 of all 22 Division I second 8s, Michigan coming in ranked number 8, SMU ranked number 9. The fact that these crews are so close to one another, it just goes to show the strength of the field, that there could potentially be 7 other boats in between there. That's how close this could come down over the next couple of days as the weekend unfolds.
So it's Texas right now at 650. Texas with a half a length lead over both Michigan and SMU. And those 2 boats are very close to one another. Michigan maybe a couple seats on SMU. And then still connected are Oregon State and Southern California with both SMU and Michigan. So we still have a tight field through 750. Longhorns out in front, maybe a little bit more than a half a length. It still is a couple of seats for Michigan over SMU. I'm remembering we've got to be top 2, or these crews need to be top 2 to move straight through and eliminate a 4th race here at the NCAA championships. But still great water here at Nathan Benderson Park. A little bit of a tailwind, so it's pushing the boats down the race course just a little bit relative to totally flat water with no wind whatsoever. But it's not coming into play. We're not seeing a lot of white water. We haven't all day long. And that's because it's nice, fair conditions. And with this just slight tailwind out front, it's the bow ball of Michigan right on the 7 women's hands in the Texas boat as they come through halfway.
And through this second 1,000 of the race, we'll be looking for the crews to stay tidy as the fatigue sets in. 1,000 meters, honestly, is the easy part of the race. The second half, getting into the third 500. Honestly, no matter what distance you're racing, whatever is 3/4 of the way in is always the hardest. You run a marathon, that was 18 to 22, the hardest. You do a 1-minute test, 45 seconds, just feels like you're hanging on by your fingernails. So this portion of the race is that tough, challenging portion of the race that does often decide the difference between crews. And just as we say that, Texas does take a few more seats just after having crossed that 1,000 meters. And just as I say that, Michigan wants to try and take them back. So knowing these, particularly the 3 crews that are out in the lead, Texas, Michigan, and Southern Methodist, they know that top 2 advance straight through to the AB semis, and otherwise everyone else needs to pass through a rep in order to make it to the semis. So they're going to look to see if they can find more speed, particularly SMU, since they are sitting in that 3rd place right now. And as soon as I say that, they crossed that 1250, and it looks like they maybe took a move. Maybe that was part of their plan, but whatever the coxswain said, the crew has responded, and they want to overtake Michigan in the last 600 meters or so of this race.
And that's really the race that's going on here that matters for qualifying positions, as Texas is now half a length ahead, open water ahead of Michigan, but it's SMU closing the gap on Michigan. And every time I'm watching this bow ball from SMU, every time they drop in the water, they're taking a couple of inches on Michigan.
They're staying clean.
So here we go, 500 meters to go. It's the Longhorns out in front, half a length of open water back to Michigan. And it's Michigan with about a half a length ahead of SMU, a charging SMU.
You can see
Adrian.
the aggression in those blades going straight to the water. They want to cross through the line. They want to pick up the speed. They want that second place spot.
And thank you, Lindsay and David, for that great race call here. Again, talking about the physiology, what we feel in that third 500. It's so important to understand what these rowers are going through in each phase of this race. It's incredibly difficult to maintain. Some of the stroke ratings that these crews are showing that's becoming standard. So 38 plus strokes a minute through the body of the piece is just brutal. But right now, I want to turn your attention to Lane 2, Southern Methodist University, as they are attempting to pull even with Michigan coming into this final stretch. So again, only 2 boats advanced to that semifinal heats, and right now Texas way out in front, about maybe a half a length to 3/4 of a length of open water, but tightening up between Michigan and the Mustangs from SMU. So as we pull into the final 250 meters, I mean, this is great racing here. Can Michigan hold them off? That coxswain looking straight across at the coxswain from the SMU boat as they go toe to toe, blades in the water almost at the same time. SMU bringing that stroke rating up, seeing if they can make that boat move a little bit more efficiently than Michigan. And I'm going to give it to them as they have overtaken Michigan for that second place spot. It is not over until it's over, but there's Texas at the line. SMU coming through right now, about 2 seats for them over Michigan as they will move into that semifinal position. In the 4th place spot, it will be that will be Oregon State from the very strong, that is Southern California from that very strong Pac-12 field, and now Oregon State coming through in 5th. So just barely a second separating out Southern Methodist and Michigan for that 2nd and 3rd place spot. Texas crossing the line at 6:18, SMU in 6:23.0, Michigan 6:23.9.
All right, we're getting ready for Heat 2 of the Division I second eights. And just talking about what we see up here at the start, it's actually slightly different. It's a more high-tech start that is available to everyone here at Nathan Benderson Park, where they're using the boots meaning this plastic sort of apparatus that will keep the boat in place. It comes up and it holds the boat in place at the start line, and then it will drop down when the start occurs, and then these boats will be free to go from dead stop to as fast as possible. They're also using a light system at the start line, and that is actually the start. Typically, at a lot of races, and the U.S. rowing rules of racing would be that the crews would be polled, meaning that the starter would say each of the names of the crews, but that is not what we see here at the NCAA Championships. They've gone full tech, Lindsay, with the start, and we're on the race course here, 5 boats across. Again, same progression, top 2 to the AB semifinal.
And right off the start, in those middle 2 lanes, as you would expect, it's lane 3, Yale, jumping out to that early lead just as their 1V did, their first varsity 8. This is the second varsity 8, second heat of the second varsity 8. So for them, probably having practiced against one another, done practice starts, practice start sequences, I'm sure that both of these crews have learned from one another how to be fast off the line. The question is, what do they do with that speed once they go to lengthen out and the race continues? Where is their efficiency? What's their most effective rate? Adrian already mentioned that some of the higher rates that athletes teams are using from start to finish these days, this slight tailwind that we do have today, very slight, not enough to slow the crews down. It would help them, push them along a little bit. That will help the boat stay a little bit lighter, as we say, which allows you to be more efficient, which would enable you to row a slightly higher rate or row your higher rate a little more effectively than you might normally. If it were a headwind, meaning the wind would blow the opposite direction, it would be blowing on your backs, that would slow the boats down, and usually a slightly different rate might be required for such conditions just because it's a heavier load. But not today. A little bit lighter load today with this slight tailwind as we push. Is Yale full length already in 500 meters?
Yeah, at the 500 meter point, it's a full length advantage for Yale out in front of the field. Second place at the moment is Ohio State, just ahead of California. So those 2 boats are in a battle here also with Rutgers. Rutgers is connected with both California and Ohio State. So these 3 boats are in this battle behind Yale. I mean, that was a big time first 500 meters from Yale. They have open water on the field. That's probably the biggest gap that we have seen in any race so far this morning at 500 meters. Yale did win this boat class at the Ivy League Championships, and that's why they came in ranked 2nd in this boat class, the second 8s, as they come through 750. And it looks like California's starting to find some speed and make a little bit of a move on the Buckeyes.
It is Cal there sitting with a slightly different, slightly lower rate, though, compared to Ohio State on the outside. Both of these crews rowing relatively similarly in terms of the length to the water. But, yep, David, as soon as I say that, it does look like they are up a little bit higher compared to Ohio State. But every coxswain on the water, every athlete on the water in this heat right now knows that top 2 go straight through to that AB semi, and otherwise they'll need to face the reps. Just see the bow woman there in lane 4 in that yellow unisuit of California. Took a peek to see right where Yale was, to see how close they were, see what they need to do in terms of reeling them in. Possibly the coxswain made a comment, let's reel them in stroke by stroke. Maybe that's what she's saying to them. Put yourself in a position of these rowers. It's 1,000 meters in, you have 1,000 more meters. There's plenty of time, there's plenty of race course left right now as long as you reel in the next crew. Think about the number of times a team has gone into halftime of a basketball game down by 20 and come out to win. The same thing is possible here as long as you believe that and you have the fitness and the will to back it up by working together, 9 women in a boat together.
Yale, half a length of open water on California. California now with half a length and maybe starting to finally sort of move away a little bit from Ohio State. The stroke ratings in those 2 boats pretty consistently, both at about 35 strokes a minute. It did look like California was lower, but I think, quite frankly, it was just a style of rowing that was kind of messing with our eyeballs. As you see, coming through 1250, it is a full half-length advantage for California. So they're going to try to hang on to it in this last 750 and try to stay ahead of Ohio State for that qualifying position in the AB semifinals. It's going to be difficult for anybody to track down Yale, though, at this point. Yale still maintaining now almost a 3/4 length open water advantage on California. California maybe 6 seats now on Ohio State. Ohio State with open water back to Rutgers now. And then it is, behind Rutgers, it is Gonzaga.
And it does look like Ohio State decided to maybe sprint a little bit early, knowing that it is top 2 to go through. California still looks pretty composed as they're waiting for that 500 meters to go before they make a decision. But hopefully that coxswain takes a peek, because Ohio State is surging through the last 500 because they would like to take one of those top 2 qualifying spots to go straight through to the AV semi.
I'll hand it to you, Adrian.
And that's right. Talking about Yale well out in front. Again, they were the champions in this event at the Ivy League. And so, you know, we know how strong of a crew they are. But man, to have open water at this point, not even quite at the final 250 meters, looking at about a 1 length advantage right now over California. California also very strong in this category, but again, really with kind of an up and down season for California. They had a showing at the Pac-12s that, you know, saw a very dominant Stanford crew, with Washington making a late season surge. But here is California looking super strong here in this second varsity 8. They looked great in the first varsity 8. So again, great to see them in that top 10. So as we come into the final strokes, Yale well out in front, but still pretty tight here between California and Ohio State. California with the lead. Looks to be about a boat length advantage over Ohio State, back to them. We've got about a length and a half back to Rutgers. Rutgers with several lengths over Gonzaga University. So Gonzaga, your WCC champion. But as we come into the line, it will be Eli from Yale with that open water lead. Bow first across the line, followed by the Golden Bears of California. And then Ohio State in that third position. And unofficially times for that heat, Yale with a time of 6:12, followed by California in 6:16, Ohio State 6:19, Rutgers 6:27, and Gonzaga 6:58. Again, those are unofficial times and placements. Just a general announcement for our spectators. If you would, please stay off of the dock that is just shy of the finish line unless you are an official media partner. So parents and fans, spectators, again, please clear the dock unless you are an official media representative. Thank you very much. Okay, we are about to commence with Heat 3 of the Division I Second Eights. We'll give you the lane assignments here. In Lane 1, Boston University. Lane 2, Virginia. Lane 3, the University of Washington. Lane 4, Pennsylvania. Lane 5, Duke. Lane 6, Northeastern.
At the start of this Heat 3, Division I second eights up here at the start line. As we reference lanes for your reference here, the lanes are drawn based on the referee, what the referee would see. So if you're the coxswain in the boat or the referee coming down, lanes read left to right, lanes 1 through 6. So if you're standing at the start staring down the race course, that would be Boston University. Over on the far side, they'll be in lane 1, and then lanes 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 are Virginia, Washington, Pennsylvania, Duke, and Northeastern, as these athletes are sitting at the start, squared and buried, anticipating the call to take off. You can see the start boot drop underneath the water again. That system holds all of the bow balls in perfect alignment. It takes a little pressure off the coxswain, and it takes a little pressure off the bow women to make sure the boat stays straight. The machine does it for you. It's a very unique tool that you don't see on that many race courses worldwide, and certainly not in the country. This is the only race course of its kind, so in the United States. So to hold the NCAA championships here is a special thing for these athletes. They're racing on a world-class rowing course here. And as we get into not yet 250 meters of this race, as to be expected, it is the University of Washington in lane 3 with those white blades that has set the tone, set the pace early, got off the line up to speed, and is already lengthening out on the rest of the field.
Yeah, so it's Washington. They won the national championship in this boat class last year here at Nathan Benderson Park. They're going to try to defend it. This is the first step in defending that national championship in this women's Division I women's second eights. And it's 3/4 of a length already for Washington, ahead of Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania sitting in second place, about a half a length ahead of lane 2 Virginia. Virginia then with almost a full length on pretty dead level Boston University and Duke at this point. So coming through 500 meters, it is quite a lead, not quite what we saw from Yale in the previous heat, but Washington does have almost a full length advantage as we're starting to see those orange blades from Virginia get into the mix. Lindsay here with Pennsylvania. Again, top two are going to move straight through to the AB semifinal and will avoid the repechage round. Right now, trying to break the overlap on the field is Washington.
And that first 500 meters of the race is kind of the get the jitters out. You have to change your rhythm a little bit because you're at a higher stroke rate off the start. You get the boat up to speed, and then you lengthen out. From that length, and the most important thing is to find your rhythm, find each other. Before the coxswain can ask you for anything else, let's get together, let's zip it up. And then the second 500 is that point where you're like, okay, we're solidifying our rhythm. We found it now, we're breathing, we're killing some time here. We're making sure we're in the race where we want to be right now. And then when you cross in about 250 meters or so, 200 if you're Washington at this point, as they've just broken clear water, certainly on the current second place crew out of Pennsylvania, you know that third 500 is going to be where, again, that sting in the legs, the sting in the lungs, you're going to want to open your eyes, you got to perk up a little bit and listen to the coxswain. Your ears might be ringing at this point. I know for me, when I was racing, I barely heard a word the coxswain said because all the blood was going to my major muscle groups so that I could push that boat along and back up my teammates. So you might have your ears ringing, and yet you still need to maintain composure to have the blade go in the water, drive like mad, and do it again somewhere in upwards of 200 or more strokes in a row over the course of 2,000 meters.
So it's Virginia trying to close the gap on Pennsylvania. That's kind of the race that's going on here for that second spot in the AB semifinal as Washington continues to maintain an open water advantage on those two boats. And Virginia is closing the gap on Pennsylvania. As I'm watching the coxswain in the Pennsylvania boat, she is looking over to her left. She knows that is happening, and she's trying to will her women on in this third 500 to try to maintain that second place position as Virginia continues to charge up there in lane 2. So coming through, and as we see the sign at 1250, 750 meters left for your defending national champion Washington Huskies. They continue to be out in front, half a length of open water, and now it is almost dead level, Lindsay, Virginia and Pennsylvania.
You can see where the Wahoos or the Cavaliers out of Virginia took the rate up a little bit. They wanted to push. They did take stroke by stroke, eat into that lead that Pennsylvania had on them, and then Pennsylvania answered that call to maybe push back out a little bit, but those two boats are going to fight for this all the way down the race course. And I love seeing a secondary race like this. What I mean is one boat's out in the lead, and then by virtue of two other crews vying for that only other qualifying spot, that closes the gap on the lead crew. Now, Washington is out in front with a comfortable margin at this point where they'll be aware if something happens. But just as I say that, Virginia has now overtaken Pennsylvania, it seems, and they are going to go back and forth for the last 500 meters. I can't wait to hear what Adrian has to say about this one.
Yeah, that coxswain, Janet Conklin in Virginia, she is even doing hand gestures. She is into this thing. She knows that her women just closed a half a length gap over 500 meters, and they are right there with Pennsylvania. We'll hand it off to you, Adrian. What a race.
What a race indeed. Just 0.2 of a second separating out between Virginia and Pennsylvania at that 1,500 meter line, with Virginia that slight edge going to them as we come into these final strokes. But it's not over till it's over. We're going to see what Pennsylvania has. They are the higher ranked crew in this category, ranked 6th in the country. Virginia ranked 11th. But Virginia right now besting Pennsylvania, the Quakers here in their first team appearance at the NCAA championship. As we cross over final 250 meters, Pennsylvania winding it up, seeing if they can come back, take away a couple of seats from Virginia. But Virginia, a tough crew, the Cavaliers charging to the finish line. Keep your eye on those two lanes flanking the University of Washington. Washington well out in front. The Huskies, the defending champion in the NCAA second varsity 8. So again, a very, very tough crew, and they are just kind of putting on a clinic here as they have been very comfortably in the lead. A little bit of open water back to them. It is a fight between the Quakers and the Cavaliers all the way to the line. As I look out from the finish tower, it's too close for me to call. This is going to come down to almost a photo finish. I am not even going to make a guess right now, as both crews, you heard it there, both crews crossing almost simultaneously. We'll wait for the official results to come in. What a race there for Virginia and Pennsylvania. Coming into their final strokes here, it will be Duke. Duke, also a very strong team out of the ACC. And now finally Boston University and Northeastern finishing their strokes. And on the screen, Washington with the lead at 6:14, Virginia 6:19.1, Pennsylvania 6:19.2. And that's what it comes down to. Tenths of a second, sometimes hundredths of a second to move on to those next set of races. All right, and this is the final heat for the Division I second eights. If these previous 3 races in this event were any indication, it's going to be hot all the way down the race course. And every time these crews step out on the race course, it's even faster, it's even more intense. And this heat coming up will be no different. Let me go ahead and give you the lane assignments here. In lane one, Rhode Island. Lane 2, Syracuse. Lane 3, Stanford. Lane 4, Brown. Lane 5, Princeton. And lane 6, Jacksonville.
All right, here we go with Heat 4, the final heat of our Division I second eights. 6 boats across. Your top ranked boats are Stanford and Brown in the center lanes. Early on here, a really nice start from Princeton as well in lane 5. Everybody's still bunched up early. It's amazing how many really clean starts that we have had, Lindsay. Obviously, it speaks to the fact that these are the NCAA championships and that all these crews had to either be invited or qualify by winning their conference championships to be here. This is the best of the best, but by the same token, typically you're going to see some mistakes as you start to see Stanford really start to move away from the field quite a bit. They are the defending silver medalists in this boat class is Stanford. They're in lane 3. Second place right now is Princeton in lane 5.
And the unique thing about being in the second varsity 8 is that you have a sparring partner in practice every day. A lot of these athletes maybe have cycled through their 1Vs, possibly through the 4s, but potentially through the 1Vs over the course of the season, in which case, speaking of clean starts, they've had a lot of practice lining up against their own teammates to work on their starts, to perfect them, and to be very, very fast off the line. So although it was Princeton who did, just like their 1V, take off from the start very quickly with a very high rate, it is Stanford who has lengthened out their rate. They're definitely rowing at a lower stroke rate or more efficient stroke rate for them than Princeton right now. And by virtue of doing so, they have one stroke at a time gradually taken 1 foot, 1 foot, 1 foot every single stroke over the last 200 meters or so to put themselves into one of those top 2 spots very clearly over Brown there in the pink hats sandwiched between Princeton in the orange and Stanford in the black and maroon.
Syracuse sitting in 4th place as we approach 750. It is Stanford still out in front. Princeton really holding strong. Princeton, the coxswain, is gyrating. I mean, she is totally and utterly into this race to the point where it's almost giving me adrenaline. Is Isabel Groskoget in the Princeton boat. And one of the things coming in that was really noticeable is that Princeton's first 8 is ranked 2nd coming in, but this second 8 is ranked 13th because I think they finished 4th at the Ivy League Championships. But they are really trying to throw a wrench into that ranking. Maybe they are upset with that ranking, Lindsay, and they're throwing it down right now is Princeton because they have a full length on 3rd place Brown. In fact, they're trying to break the overlap now on 3rd place Brown. Brown with a full length on 4th place Syracuse. And then it is probably too close to call between Rhode Island and Jacksonville. But as we come through the halfway point, it's really the same kind of gap. It's a half a length lead for Stanford over Princeton, Princeton a full length over Brown.
And as we come into the second 1,000, crossover into the second 1,000 of the race, Syracuse is trying to sneak back up in there with Brown, knowing that they're going to have to. There are more spots for those AB semis available than just 2, but only 2 that will go directly from this race. So everyone in this race who isn't in the top 2 positions is still looking to lay down their best race so that they can put their best foot forward, maybe continue to gain speed over the course of the weekend throughout the regatta from race to race. Find little kinks, find little spots where maybe they can get a little bit faster. You know, I did mention earlier that Princeton is rowing a higher rate. Apparently that is what they are practiced. That is what they are used to. And it is not doing them a disservice against Stanford, who did eke out there in the beginning after Princeton took the early lead and then Stanford took over. But Princeton is just going right with them. And both crews have created certainly open water space over a theoretically more highly ranked Brown crew coming into this. And, you know, we talked about the championship, the conference championships happening at the end of the season prior to this. You have enough time in 2 weeks' time to make up speed, not just by shuffling the lineups, people within boats, but within the lineup itself. Every single person in this seat in the boat plays a unique role in the boat based on the seats that they are in. If you don't know what I mean, hop in an 8 and try sitting in a different seat in a single practice. Did that one time. It feels very different in every single seat. When you find the right combo to create that efficient rhythm, that's where more speed is gained just by making technical changes and rhythm changes.
All right, Adrian, we're going to hand it off to you. It's Stanford ahead of Princeton, who has open water on Brown and Syracuse.
And what a great race as we come into these final strokes, moving into the spectator area. A little bit of a breeze out there, but definitely nothing that these crews can't handle. But Stanford way out in front, a little bit of open, not quite a little bit of open water for them between themselves and Princeton. Princeton flipping the script a little bit here in terms of, you know, trying to see if they can really make a statement over their teammates from the Ivy League in in Brown. So Princeton having been ranked 13th in this event, Brown ranked 5th. But, you know, it's anyone's game. A lot of reshuffling can happen, as Lindsay had been saying, between their championships and the big show, the NCAA championships. Different teams have different strategies coming into this event. But right now, it is the Cardinal of Stanford. The strategy for them, it's to be out in front and stay out in front. Derek Burns, the Pac-12 Coach of the Year. Stanford having an almost perfect Pac-12 championship. They are looking to make a statement after last year's three-way tie in points. It was a nail-biter last year, and this time Stanford looking to leave nothing on the table. As they come to the line with their bow first across the line, they will be followed by Princeton, the Tigers, moving directly into that A and B semifinal. And now here comes Brown. Bruno having to move on to the reps a little bit later this afternoon. And now the Orangemen of Syracuse. Syracuse with the best finish for their team last year. They came in 10th overall, the 5th time in the last 6 years that they have represented their university at these NCAA championships. So great job to Syracuse, looking to better their marks from last year. And now here comes Rhode Island and then Jacksonville. Still some overlap here between the Rams and the Dolphins, but it will be Rhode Island with that 5th place finish, followed by Jacksonville. And there is no rest in the racing here as we move our attention back up to the start. This is the first fours race of the day, looking at the Division I fours. There will be 5 boats on the water and 4 heats. Same progression. The top 2 boats advance to the A and B semifinals. The remainder moving on to the repechage. Repechage meaning second chance. In this heat, it will be Pennsylvania in lane 1. In lane 2, Yale. Lane 3, Texas. Lane 4, Southern California. And lane 5, Syracuse.
Okay, as we get ready to go with Heat 1 of the Division I fours who have just gotten on the race course. It's 5 boats across, same progression up to the AB semifinal. You may be asking yourself, where's the coxswain when you're watching these pictures at home, especially if you're new to rowing and you're tuning into these NCAA championships? Well, all these coxswains are laying down in the bow of the boat. So you can see their heads. They're behind the bow woman rower in each of these boats. So they're actually in the front of the boat as they come down the race course. As you have Texas taking an early lead in lane 3. Texas finished with the bronze medal, 3rd place in this boat class last year at the national championship here at Nathan Benderson Park. Also in the race and really pretty much dead level are Southern California and Yale as they come through 250. So it's a different boat class. You've been watching 8s all morning. These are the 4s. We're also going to see some 4s later on in the Division II heats that we will have after these Division I heats finish up. But right now it's the Longhorns. It's about half to 3/4 of a length ahead of slight second place here. I'm going to give to Southern California maybe about a seat ahead of Yale.
With this being the 4, the coxed 4 specifically, that you do have a coxswain versus a straight 4, which would be a boat without a coxswain, this is a longer race. Even though it is still a bit of a tailwind, it's a smaller boat, so conditions move it around a little bit more. You have to be really technically savvy. The smaller the boats get, the boat gives you more feedback. You have a greater percentage of impact on the overall stabilization, stability of the boat, the overall speed of the boat. Rather than being an 1/8 of it, you're a 1/4 of it. So it's going to give you more feedback than an 8 potentially would if you're going to go row it. The other thing is, let's say you did have some shuffling around between boats with your team since conference championships. What if you went from an 8 to a 4? It's very different in terms of how it feels on your legs, and it's very different in terms of how it feels on your lungs, simply by virtue of the fact that it is a longer race.
So it's not technically longer in terms of distance, but it is longer in terms of time, as you have the Longhorns out in front. A little bit of open water now on still second place, just barely, I will say, Southern California ahead of Yale. The Yale coxswain, Grace Menke from Sarasota Crew in high school, certainly knows this course very well, and we'll see if that comes into play as they come into this middle part of the race, as it's Yale and it's Southern California for the second spot. But right now it's open water for the Longhorns out in front. Very controlled right now from Texas. Sitting in 4th place is right in front of us, Syracuse, and 5th place is the boat furthest from us from the University of Pennsylvania. But it is dead level, Lindsay. It is stroke for stroke right now between Southern California and Yale for that second spot.
And it's going to come down to whichever of these two crews does have more in the tank because of who's been more efficient. But as of right now, they both seem to be pretty comfortable in what they're doing. The boats are staying tidy, they're moving together. And so after they cross through that second 1,000 of the race, which maybe Yale has started to push a little bit before that 1,000-meter mark in order to nudge their bow ball out in front, which is a confidence boost. Something to think about is, even if you're behind, or even if you're the trailing crew, if your coxswain tells you that what you're doing is being effective into either eating lead or taking a little bit more of a lead, that opens your eyes as an athlete. That tells you, hey, what we're doing is right. Let's keep pushing. We can go even faster. And that's what helps get you through that wall that sometimes can happen here in this third 500 meters of the race. Anything the coxswain can say to boost your confidence at this point is going to help. Question is, which coxswain knows what to say when you need it most?
So I have both of these boats. I have both Yale and Southern California at 36 strokes a minute. I have Texas at 32. So we know one thing for sure here as they come through 1250, 750 meters left, and that is that Texas has some more gears because they can certainly take the stroke rating up from a 32. And so they are out in front right now at 1250, right at that red buoy line. I have Yale for the first time ahead of Southern California by like a foot. And as soon as I said that, I'm looking at the bows and they're dead level again. So this is a real serious race for the second spot in the AB semifinal between Yale and Southern California. It's Texas out front. It continues to be Syracuse in 4th place. It continues to be Pennsylvania in 5th place. As they approach these last 500 meters here at Nathan Benderson Park, it's Texas, and then it is a grudge match. Who's going to find the speed? who's going to get that bow across the line ahead and move through to the AB semifinal? Is it going to be Yale? Is it going to be Southern California?
There is something to be said for making sure that as many of your boats as possible can place as high as possible, because every single boat class here earns points toward the team title. The first varsity 8 potentially earning up to 36 points, the second varsity 8 earning up to 24 points, the 4 earning up to 12 points. So as many crews as you can have in the upper echelon of crews here, that's going to help your overall team score. And this is a team sport. It's not one and done. It is all about everyone out here doing the best they can for the whole team.
All right, we're going to hand it off to you, Adrian. Southern California and Yale are stroke for stroke, 500 meters to go.
And I'm really just moved by the calm demeanor from that Longhorn boat that's way out in front. I mean, the bodies, the faces, everything is just relaxed. So these guys are doing exactly what they are meant to be doing. They're out in front, stay out in front, get the job done, get into that AB and semifinal, but don't put everything out on the table. Don't show all of your cards, because we know, like David said, they've got another gear there. So Texas well out in front, but then the grudge match, as he referred to, between Yale and Southern California has tightened up as we've come into these final 250 meters. Yale maybe a little bit more hungry than Southern California. Yale missed out on the NCAA championships last year due to COVID troubles, and here they are trying to prove that they are belonging in this top 10 of at the NCAAs. They are the 9th ranked crew. Southern California just in front of them as the 8th ranked crew. So again, they know their rankings coming into it, so they've got something to prove. Yale and Southern California battling it out as we come into the final strokes. But Texas, it will be the Longhorns first across the line, moving into that AB semifinal spot. And then it will be the Bulldogs of Yale now moving out to just a little bit of open water over the Trojans of Southern California. So that is unofficial, and you can see the look of relief in the Yale boat as they move into that second spot. Finishing up, it will be Syracuse. Syracuse closest to shore, and then Pennsylvania in the 5th place position. Unofficial times, we'll see Texas pulling a 6:56 in first place, followed by Yale in 7:04 and Southern California 7:07. So those are unofficial times and placements. If you are looking for the official times for this regatta, they can be found at regattatiming.com.
As we take it off here in the Heat 2 of the Division I fours, we have Northeastern on the far side, with Virginia next to them in lane 2. Next to them, Stanford, Michigan, and Rutgers on the near shore here, closest to the finish tower of the race course. And right here off the start, these crews, it is instantly Stanford shooting out to an early lead just by a few seats, but in this few strokes to take a few seats this early on shows a little bit of efficiency in what you were doing by breaking it out. So if this 4 follows in the same vein of their other 2 boats that we've seen come down the race course so far, they'll stay composed and they'll look for inches every stroke down the course. Now, let me correct something about the points, totals, and scoring here. As mentioned, in the 4, in the 2V, in the 1V, each of these boats scores points for the overall team total. Up to 66 in the 1V, in the varsity 8, in up to 44 in the second 8, and up to 22 here in this 4. That total points adds up for the team title, but in the event of a tie, which is exactly what we saw last year, which was a 3-way tie, the tiebreaker is delineated by the placement in the varsity 8. So really it comes down to the very last minute a lot of times where you don't know how things are going to go. All that you know is that when it's your job to line up at the start, you go down the race course and lay down the best 2,000 meters that you can, and the next time that you race, you go out and do it again, and then let the points take care of themselves. But the better that every single one of your crews does all weekend long, that doesn't lead question. So I'm sure that a lot of these crews are coming out here going, leave no question, best race that we have in us today, right now.
All right, so it's Stanford out front at 600 meters. They've got about a deck on Michigan. Michigan with almost a full length on third place, Virginia. Virginia with about a seat of open water on the boat from Rutgers. Rutgers with some open water on Northeastern. So that's how they all stand at this moment. So it's the Stanford lead, but really it's about the same distance that they got early on in the first 10 strokes or so. They kind of just put their bow in front. It is Michigan, 7th ranked Michigan, who is staying right with Stanford at this point as they come through 750, but their progression remains the same. Top 2 are going to go to the AB semifinal and do their job here in this heat, and then everyone else is going to have to fight for only a couple of remaining spots in those AB semifinals, which is where you want to be to try to qualify ultimately for the A final. These are the 4s. One of the things I wanted to mention as a former coxswain is that when you're laying down in the bows of these boats, particularly when you get ahead, it is very difficult to understand where you are on the race course relative to the other boats. It almost becomes more of a self-motivation situation then for the rowers, because they are the ones that can see where the rest of the field is. But right now, match race up front, Lindsay, with about a length of open water back to third place, Virginia. It's a match race up front between Stanford and Michigan.
And having 2 boats that close, having someone side by side right there with you, both of these crews are staying very composed. We're 1,000 meters in at this point. It's definitely starting to burn. Now the race really begins. What do you have in you? Because it is, again, in terms of time, a longer race here. But the fact that both of these crews have stayed relatively clean to the water and stayed right connected for this long of a period of time, it's loud. They can hear the blades entering the water of the boat next to them. They can hear the coxswain next to them, as long as their ears aren't ringing, I guess, at this point. But for them to be able to stay this composed with someone that close to them is really impressive.
So I've got Stanford about 33 strokes a minute, and I have Michigan about 36. So they are dropping in at different cadences. Those are the number of strokes they're taking per minute, or these 2 boats, as they come through 1250. Stanford has extended their lead now on Michigan to a half a length at 1250. So 750 meters to go. It's Stanford by half a length over Michigan. Michigan's advantage over third place Virginia is more than a length of open water. So it really is a 2-boat race at the moment. And we'll see if the Wolverines decide that they want to really start challenging Stanford up front. Sometimes really strategy does come into play when you've got this much clear space back to a quote-unquote non-qualifying position, as Michigan does, where maybe they just want to hang on, maybe conserve a little bit of energy. Never really know what you're going to see, but it still is connection up front between Stanford and Michigan.
And that's exactly right, David. You never know what other teams' strategies are. It's not your job to worry about what their strategy is. I was certainly raised through racing to just go out there and lay it on the line and not hide anything, you know, by doing something different or holding back or anything like that. But that is something that some crews do, where they do go, okay, this is all that we need right now. We know that we have more races coming up. We know that this is a competitive field. What is the smart thing in this moment?
So we'll hand it off to you, Adrian. It's now open water. So as much as we were talking there for the last 30 seconds, Stanford opened up water on Michigan. What's getting really close here is Rutgers and Virginia, but there is more than a length of open water between second place Michigan and this battle that's going on between Rutgers and Virginia.
And thank you, Lindsay and David, for that great race call here in this fours race that Stanford is really just kind of putting a clinic on up there with a bit of open water over Michigan. Earlier in the season, Stanford and Michigan and Virginia actually had a chance to race each other, and Michigan was the boat that ended up out on top. So by several seconds, actually. So Stanford may be retooling things a little bit in their crews, or just kind of figuring out some pieces. Again, Derek Burns, a great coach with tons of experience and really knowing how to put things together when it counts. And right now, Stanford just looking so relaxed and so long. We did talk about stroke ratings. I've got Stanford clocked for the body of this piece at 33 strokes a minute. Michigan just a little bit higher at 36. So Stanford may be moving their boat just a little bit more efficiently with a little bit longer of a stroke. Michigan just, you know, very, very strong here. Again, they are doing the job that they need to do to get into that A and B semifinal. Behind them, by a bit of open water, it is a furious charge here by both Virginia and Rutgers as we head to the line. Again, important for them in terms of lane placement and where they go into the reps. So they'll get another chance to race, but they want to put down the best time that they can coming into these final strokes. So it will be the Cardinal first across the line, open water back to them, Michigan. Half a boat length of open water back to Virginia. And now Rutgers, and then finally Northeastern. Unofficial times in these fours, very fast times here. Stanford pulling a 6:54.3. Michigan 6:59, Virginia 7:04, Rutgers 7:07. And then Northeastern 7:42. Those are unofficial times and placements. And we will continue back with the racing with the third heat in the Division I fours, moving it back up to the start with beautiful sunny conditions, a little bit of wind coming across, but definitely nothing that these crews cannot handle. We'll give you the lane assignments for this third heat. We'll look at 6 boats on the course. Boston University in lane 1. California, lane 2. Lane 3, Princeton. Lane 4, Brown. Lane 6, Oregon State. Lane 7, Jacksonville.
Getting ready for Heat 3 of the Division I fours. And the boots just came down. They're on the race course. 6 boats across. We're going to see 2 straight heats of 6 boats across. Progression's the same. Got to be top 2 to move straight through to the AB semifinal. Looking at the conditions down here at the start line, just a little bit of wind out of the southwest. So it's still basically a tailwind. Nice flat water. Again, we're not seeing a lot of white water. We're not seeing a lot of splash from really any of these crews, which is a telltale sign that it's nice and flat and that the conditions really aren't going to do much to affect the rowing. Early on, we've got Princeton out in front. They are ranked 3rd coming in. And just adjacent to them are the other 2 boats that are out. It's California and Brown. It's California actually slightly ahead of Brown at 250. So we've got these 3 boats separated by about a half a length. It's Princeton, California, and Brown in that order. Then it's Oregon State, Jacksonville, and Boston University.
And with these fours, we mentioned it earlier that from a technical standpoint, you have to stay clean in these boats. You're more aware of the water, you're lower to the water, so if there is a splash, you're going to feel it. If you bobble a little bit, you're going to move the boat around a little bit more because, again, you are a quarter of what's happening in the boat. Be it by virtue of the coxswain also being down there in the bow instead of being in front of the stroke woman there, there's nothing there. It's a very strange sensation to have nothing out in front of you except the stern deck of the boat from a stroke seat standpoint. A lot of times that results in people overreaching, going for a little bit of extra, but as it seems right now, you know, these 3 boats that are out in front are maintaining a little bit of composure, wanting to make sure that they are staying in their rhythm, changing nothing simply because here we are at this big race, the NCAA championship. They're looking for 2 spots, not 3, 2 spots that go through to that AB semifinal. But again, these 3 boats out in front, it seems to be California in the yellow on the far side that has stayed a little bit lower on the stroke rate, a little bit more conservative, I'd say, compared to the other 2 crews. But what you practice is what is effective for you. And for Princeton, it's a slightly higher rate, a little more upright, and it's certainly given them nearly a boat length lead here in this first 750 meters.
Yeah, it's about 37 for Princeton, 36 for Cal, and about 38 for Brown. So all pretty close to one another in terms of the strike rate as we come through 750. And it's now Brown actually taking over 2nd place from California. Again, of the 3 boats, California just slightly understroking the other 2. Will that come into play? Typically, it would start to show itself more in the 3rd 500 as we are not even halfway through, but it is open water now for Princeton of a couple of seats ahead of Brown. Brown with about 3 seats, maybe about 20 feet on California. The gap from California back to 4th place, Oregon State, is quite a bit of open water. So it really is kind of a 3-boat race at this point, 900 meters in, with Princeton out in front, open water ahead of Brown. Brown with half a length now on California as they come through halfway. So it's going to be that California coxswain is going to have to make sure, particularly in this 3rd 500, that she motivates her women. She does what she needs to do to at least maintain the same positioning relative to Brown, so that in the last 500, maybe she can call on some heroics to try to get past Brown and get into one of those qualifying positions.
And as we get through into this 3rd 500 meters of the race, Brown does seem to have taken a few more seats away from California there on the far side of the course. But there is still a lot of race left to be rowed here. Even though Princeton, again, they've had this open water lead, Brown seems to be eating into that lead a little bit, and that could potentially take California along with them. But by virtue of being out in front, having all 4 rowers be able to keep eyes on what's going on behind them, that actually helps the coxswain, because as David mentioned earlier, it's hard for the coxswain if you're out in front in a bow-loaded boat like this to see what's going on behind. So sometimes they rely on the bow seat. That would be the first rower that will cross the finish line once these boats cross the finish line, to give her a little bit of feedback on where they are, because she really can't get up and out of that boat. If she moves around, it's going to tip the boat around, and that's going to slow them down. So taking that extra peak is just not worth it at this point in the race.
Right, so that is something that is extremely important in these 4s, is that the bow person have a conversation with the coxswain as necessary. And you don't see that. That's not really going to happen in an 8. Sometimes a stroke rower might talk to the coxswain, but that's about it. But in this situation, the bow person being right next to the coxswain sometimes has to fill the coxswain in on what's going on. So it has spaced out just a little bit in terms of Brown and California. As they come through 1,500 meters with 500 meters left, it's a half a length open water for Princeton ahead of Brown. Brown with maybe a seat of open water ahead of California, and then at quite a gap back to Oregon State, and then Jacksonville and Boston University as we pass it off to you, Adrian.
All right, and thank you, David and Lindsay, for that great race call. So Princeton well out in front. They do have the top seed in this heat. They are currently ranked 3rd overall teams in this 4. Last season, Princeton finished 12th overall as a team, and the V4 factored in quite a bit to that top finish. The V4 had a top 10 finish, so really helped their team to move up in terms of the overall finish for the team last year at this championship. At the Ivy League championship, Princeton was overtaken Brown for the lead, so they did have the advantage in coming into this NCAA heat. Brown looking very strong here, with California ranked a little bit below Brown, but California putting on definitely a challenge to Brown coming into these final strokes. So you can see California in the far lane bringing their stroke rate up, quite a bit of strength in the back half of their stroke. So really pushing that boat towards the finish line, bringing their stroke rating up. A little bit of a bobble there on that starboard side a couple of strokes ago, but they have seemed to recovered quite well. But I think it's going to be a little bit too late for the Golden Bears as Bruno holding off California coming in to the final 10 strokes here. Princeton definitely with that lead. It will be their bow first across the line to move into that a semifinal. And now here comes Brown with California on the chase. And now here comes Pac-12 rival Oregon State. And then Jacksonville in 5th, followed by Boston University. So unofficially, it will be Princeton and Brown moving on to those semifinals. The remaining crews will have another chance to get into the A and B semifinals by virtue of the reps later on this afternoon. And setting the lane assignments for this final heat for the Division I 4s. We will again have 6 boats on the course. In lane 1, Gonzaga University. Lane 2, Duke. Lane 3, Ohio State. Lane 4, Washington. Lane 5, Southern Methodist University. Lane 6, Rhode Island.
we're off here in the Division I fours, Heat 4. Gonzaga on the far side, Duke next to them in lane 2, Ohio State, Washington, SMU, and Rhode Island rounding out this 6-boat field as we take it off here for the last race of the morning for Division I before we get into Division II. And right from the start, right from the very beginning, it is in lane 4, Washington looking to set a precedent early, set a standard early as they have in some of their other crews. Ohio State moving along with them, but ever so slightly off of the pace that Washington has set very, very early on here. One thing that's interesting about the difference between racing a 4 and racing an 8, apart from the size difference, is that some people prefer rowing smaller boats. I've certainly coached athletes who prefer rowing 4s compared to 8s. So that's an interesting component of when you look at these teams, who's in which crew. But again, as we mentioned earlier, talking about the team points trophies and how you can help your team place, going out from the very first race of your 2022 NCAA championship regatta, you want to go out and lay down your best race, to put your best foot forward for your team and represent your team to the best of your ability, which Washington is doing very, very early on here in this race.
So the Huskies of the University of Washington, they are the defending champions in this boat class, the women's 4. And this is our last of the Division I heats on our first day of the 2022 NCAA championships from Nathan Benderson Park in Sarasota, Bradenton, Florida. It is Washington out in front. They're trying to break the overlap on the Ohio State University, and they haven't quite done it through 500 meters. But I suspect, based on how I'm watching the bow of Ohio State and the tip of the stern of Washington, that they will have clear water, Will Washington, in about 100 more meters. Sitting in third place is SMU, Southern Methodist University, in the bright red boat. If you're watching at home, is sitting in a solid third place position. But again, the progression is you've got to be top 2. So SMU is going to have to try to hang tight here and try to start chipping away at getting back into Ohio State and Washington if they're going to move straight through to the AB semis. Sitting in fourth place is Duke. Fifth place is the boat up in lane 1 from Gonzaga, and then it's Rhode Island in 6th place as they come through 750.
And for those of you who are out there watching, if you're wondering about the rankings that we keep discussing, in lanes 3 and 4 is where you find the crews of each of these races that come into their respective events ranked the highest within their own heat. And so lane 3 is the highest potential position, followed by lane 4. So Ohio State comes into this ranked 4th, Washington ranked 5th. So not surprising that they should be the crews that are out in front. And so if you're watching and you see a crew not in lane 3 or 4, either in the lead or hanging with the lead, maybe look it up and see how they're ranked and see how they're doing, because that is not a Cinderella story per se, but a team that has decided to show up on race day and whatever the ranking is, again, laying down their best race to earn the most points for their team.
So through the 1,000-meter point, it's open water out in front for Washington ahead of Ohio State. Ohio State with almost a full length of open water back to SMU, a very spaced out field, one of the more spaced out ones we have seen all morning long here at our 2022 NCAA championships. But it's Washington trying to go ahead and win this heat as they try to maintain their distance or even move out more on Ohio State. And I do believe, Lindsay, as I watch them, that they are continuing to move away from Ohio State is Washington. They're trying to defend their crown in this varsity 4 from last season when they won the national championship on these same waters. Still a little bit of a tailwind, and it's really doing nothing but propelling these boats down the race course. We're not seeing white water. We're not seeing a lot of splash. As they come through 1250, it's more than a length of open water now, about a 10-meter open water advantage for Washington ahead of Ohio State. Ohio State with maybe 2 or 3 seats of open water on SMU.
Something of note, some of these crews, depending on where they row, they might have more experience being exposed to wind or bumps or wakes by motorboats. Washington is certainly a crew like that, so any sort of chop on a race course, they would certainly be used to rowing in a place where they like they do, because it is certainly not flat there very often. Lots of motorboat traffic, lots of wind exposure, and so that can actually be to their advantage. You know, when it's flat, you love it when it is flat because it makes you feel like you are queen of the world, $1 million, best rower on the planet. But when it's not flat, it's also no big deal. It's not intimidating. And so that is something of note, that all of these crews row on very different bodies of water throughout the country. So any practice on bumps or flat, whatever it is, by the time you get here, you want to have the most experience possible. And Washington showing that they're used to maybe a little bump here and there.
So a very dominant row to the 1,500-meter point for Washington. Almost 2 lengths of open water ahead of Ohio State, then SMU, Duke, and then it's Gonzaga and Rhode Island. We'll pass it off to you at the finish line tower, Adrian.
And as you can see, Washington, again, very comfortable in this little bit, I wouldn't even call this rough water, but it's not glassy anymore. And again, rowing where they do in the Pacific Northwest with variable weather conditions, this is definitely nothing that they are not familiar with. So Washington well out in front. Again, they are the defending NCAA champion in this category, so they are definitely going to gear up to be one of the fastest crews here at the championship in this category. They were the 3rd place team overall last year, but with the V4 factoring into that high finish. So here they come, winding it up, 250 meters. When you see those red buoys, that's 250 meters to go. So Washington just executing their race plan to perfection, hoping to, again, throw down a really good time so that they get good lane placement in that A and B semifinals. Behind them, Ohio State. Ohio was 6th overall as a team last year. So again, hoping to be in that top 10 on the leaderboard. Behind them, Southern Methodist University. Great showing for them as they winded up into their sprint phase. It's going to be a little bit too late for them. They will have to race in the reps, but they are, again, executing. That's a really important part of these heats, is putting down a rehearsal every single time you come down the race course, perfecting that race plan and improving upon it every time. But the Huskies first across the line, followed by Ohio State, unofficially moving into those A and B semifinals. Southern Methodist with that 3rd place finish. They will be followed by Duke. And then Gonzaga University, not far behind, but a little bit of open water behind Duke. And then finally, Rhode Island for the 6th place position. Okay, and we will now move over to the Division II events. First up will be the 8s. So in Division II, there are 2 boat categories contested, 1-8 and 1-4. The progression will be in each event that the winner of each event will go directly to the grand final. The remainder will move on to the reps. So a lot on the line here, as again, this is not progressing to a semifinal. This progresses directly to the grand final. We'll go ahead and give you the lane assignments here. We just have 3 boats on the course. In lane 2, Central Oklahoma. Lane 3, Mercyhurst. Lane 4, Seattle Pacific.
All right, we're back down at the start line. This is Heat 1 of the Division II 8s. And Division II is 6 teams at these championships. So you're going to see a bunch of 3-boat races here in these 4 heats. It's going to be the 8s and then the 4s. So each of these teams bringing an 8 and a 4 to the championships. These 3 boats being Central Oklahoma, the Broncos in lane 2, the Mercyhurst Lakers in lane 3, and closest to us on the wave attenuator in lane 4 is the Seattle Pacific Falcons. Early on, it is a little bit of a lead here for University of Central Oklahoma in lane 2. They've got maybe about 20 feet on deadlocked Mercyhurst and Seattle Pacific.
And for this, because there are 6 teams, it's top 1 to advance to the grand final. That's without a semi. They go straight from here. Whoever comes across the finish line first in this Heat 1 of Division II 8, they will go straight to the grand final. The other 2 boats will go to the rep. And as David mentioned, it is University of Central Oklahoma in the far side. They come in here not ranked in the top position, but they are certainly putting themselves in the top position here. And they are also no strangers to being out in front. They are 3-time defending champions, having won the Division II title in 2018, 19, and 21, looking to defend that here.
Right, and so as a team, they won the title last year here. So a lot of these athletes coming back, they know the race course at 500 meters is going to be a lead for University of Central Oklahoma. But now pulling away a little bit from Seattle Pacific is Mercyhurst. And Mercyhurst is starting to close the gap as they go past the Nathan Benderson Park rest area over there at 600 meters. It is much closer up front. It's a deck. So it's probably about 8 feet right now for Central Oklahoma, really getting pressed by Mercyhurst in that lane 3 position. Mercyhurst has pulled away a half a length ahead of 3rd place Seattle Pacific, but this is great racing. These boats are all still connected, full contact, as you said earlier, Lindsay, and that's what we want to see, and that's what we would expect. 6 teams here for this Division II level, and they are all going to be competitive in these races. They come through 750 Looks like Mercyhurst wants the lead.
They are certainly, they're pushing for the lead. Every bit of what they are taking it on their own volition. Their coxswain made some sort of call. They've collected themselves a little bit. They decided to make a move in the second 1,000 of the race. Take the first 500 to get organized. Just stay patient there, stay clean, because we do have little bumps on the race course, nothing major yet, but that does mean that the athletes need to, as the blades exit the water, have a little more clearance to make sure they stay clean, because every little bit of touch on the water slows you down just a minute amount. You do that enough times, you lose a little speed over the full 2,000-meter race. The other thing about being a slightly faster race than normal due to this tailwind condition is you kind of run out of time to go fast. So every little bobble means a little bit more because the race itself is going to take less time than it might otherwise. So as Mercyhurst through that second half of the second 500 of this race, they got themselves about a deck of a lead over our early leaders and defending national champions, University of Central Oklahoma. The question is, in this critical third 500, are they going to continue to decide to make very methodical moves?
Right, so it's Mercyhurst right now, and they have about 20 feet on the boat from Central Oklahoma at about 1,150 meters into our 2,000-meter race course. The cadence, the amount of strokes per minute is slightly different between the boats. I had Mercyhurst at 37. I had Central Oklahoma at 35. So will that come into play? Again, we've talked about it. Typically, it will come into play, if at all, in this third 500. The lower stroke rating, if you can maintain the same speed as somebody at a higher stroke rating, typically is going to help you. But right now, it's Mercyhurst continuing to move away. So obviously the fitness is there, even though they're slightly overstroking University of Central Oklahoma at 1,300 meters. It's now a two-third length lead for the boat from Mercyhurst ahead of Central Oklahoma. And still in the mix here is Seattle Pacific as Central Oklahoma tries to close the gap. They're going to try to keep chipping away, it looks like, at that lead that Mercyhurst has. And they've done a good job of taking maybe a seat or so back. It's about a half a length lead.
You can see, even though they are Mercyhurst in the green there, in that middle lane, lane 3, with that bucket, those two oars on the starboard side back-to-back one another. That's the middle two starboard oars in the boat. They're in a bucket. They are, the blades are just very direct to the water. It's, even though they're at that slightly higher rate, they are staying composed and together, even as a few bumps start to pick up down the course as we enter into the last 500 meters and the wind continues to pick up a little bit.
So we're going to hand it off to you, Adrian. It is a connection up front between Mercyhurst and University of Central Oklahoma for one spot in the grand final. Seattle Pacific in third place. We'll hand it to you.
And curious here in this first heat of the Division II 8s, we've got Seattle Pacific closest to the shoreline. They are your top-ranked team coming into this championship. Behind them, it would be Mercyhurst, and then the defending national champion, Central Oklahoma, is your fifth-ranked team. So some of these crews have seen each other throughout the season. There is usually a lot of cross-regional racing amongst the Division II teams. So Central Oklahoma having already contested Seattle Pacific earlier in the season. Seattle Pacific came out on top in that contest at the Great Northwest Athletic Conference. So Seattle Pacific, the top crew coming out of that conference championship, but Central Oklahoma right here reversing that scenario. So on the national level, Central Oklahoma and Mercyhurst, this is their first time racing each other directly. But last year at the championship, Central Oklahoma was your champion with Mercyhurst as the runner-up. And right now, Mercyhurst out for blood as they continue to lead with one full length over the Broncos. The Broncos surging towards that finish line because, again, only one boat will go directly to that grand final. And it's everything on the line here to make sure that you are that crew that gets to rest this afternoon, take it easy, retool, and come back for that grand final. Mercyhurst directly into the grand finals. It will be the Broncos of Central Oklahoma and Seattle Pacific Falcons moving on to the repechage later this afternoon. Okay, and we're just a few minutes away from the start of Heat 2 for the Division II 8s. Only 3 boats on the course. In lane 2, Embry-Riddle. Lane 3, Jefferson. Lane 4, Western Washington.
All right, boots are down. 3 boats on the race course. This is Heat 2 of the Division II 8s. And it's Embry-Riddle, Thomas Jefferson, and Western Washington. Looks like early on, Thomas Jefferson, the Rams, who row out of Crescent Boat Club on Boathouse Row in Philadelphia, trying to take an early lead. But that early lead is maybe like a foot. It's maybe a seat. And then it is both Western Washington and Embry-Riddle that are pretty much deadlocked. Now Western Washington moving away a little bit from the Eagles of Embry-Riddle as we approach 250. And we'll see how this thing starts to shape up. I'll start to get some stroke ratings as they start to settle into the body of the race, the body pacing. But up front, it is still a seat lead for Thomas Jefferson ahead of Western Washington.
And they do seem to be trading bow ball to bow ball here as now we get into the second half of this first 500 meters of the race. At this point, these 8s might still be in their kind of lengthened out start sequence. You do your first 5 off of your start, nice and short, get the boat up to speed. Your stroke rate stays quite high for maybe the next 10 or 20 strokes, depending on how you've practiced, how you've trained, and then maybe another 10 or 20 strokes, again, depending on how you've practiced and trained, where you do like a sub-lengthen before you lengthen out to the meat of the race, which it now looks like at this point that both lanes 3 and 4, Thomas Jefferson and Western Washington on the near side, have definitely lengthened out to their base rates, the body of this piece, as they enter into the middle 1,000 of the race. From a textbook race plan standpoint, that's definitely where you would want to be 400 meters in, certainly be into the body of your race. By 500 meters, you certainly want to find your rhythm, and if not, coxswain needs to make some calls to make those slight technical focus adjustments to make sure that everyone is really working together here, because what matters is that everybody's firing together. If one person in any of these boats wants to go a little bit harder without the coxswain asking for it or without the crew asking for it, that extra effort gets wasted. So it really is about sticking to the plan and paying attention to what's going on in front and behind you.
Thomas Jefferson with about 10 feet ahead of Western Washington, also understroking Western Washington by about 1.5 beats. So that's how many strokes they're taking per minute relative to one another. So Thomas Jefferson about a stroke and a half less per minute than Western Washington. As they come through, again, one is going to go straight to the grand final and not have to race out here 3 times at our 2022 NCAA championships. So there is a big reward for winning this heat. And Thomas Jefferson is starting to move away a little bit from Western Washington as I watch the bow ball of Western Washington starting to dip back just a little bit, but still within striking distance. We haven't even reached the halfway point, and the bow ball of the Western Washington 8 is right on about the 3-woman's hands when she hits the catch in that boat from Thomas Jefferson. So not an insurmountable lead by any means over 1,000 meters. As we come through the halfway point, it's Thomas Jefferson ahead of Western Washington and Embry-Riddle.
And let's talk about what's on the line for this. That one spot direct to that grand final means you don't race again later this afternoon. The rep is not tomorrow. It will be later this afternoon for the crews that don't come across the line in that one and only top finishing here in the second heat of the Division II 8s.
Jefferson moving out. They have a bigger lead now. It's about 3/4 of a length advantage and continuing to pop away each time they drop in the water from Western Washington. So as they approach, they're about 1,200 meters in, 800 meters left. They're going to try to break the overlap. Looking at the coxswain in that Jefferson boat, Mara Holt, she is looking to her right. She's looking at that bow ball. I've been in that position before. What you're saying to your crew is, I don't want to see the bow ball anymore. I want you to break the overlap. I want you to get me clear water. It is a huge then victory if you are able to pull that off. It's going to make the rowers feel really good about the effort that they are putting in, and they now have broken the overlap, has Jefferson, on Western Washington.
And that's the perfect timing for it. Set them up with the last 600 meters or so of this race to come down the course, knowing that they've very methodically, little by little, taken that length over the course of the middle of this portion of this middle 1,000 of this 2,000 meter race, that what they've done one stroke to the next. It hasn't been one major move, it's been little by little. The other nice thing to see out of this Jefferson crew is that they have had a few little bobbles, the blade hitting the water, but they haven't let it phase them. They've recovered from that and gotten right back to it, right? It hasn't knocked them off of their rhythm, which has contributed to their ability to continue to extend their lead over currently second place Western Washington, who is very familiar with being at the national championships, having been here many times over the last decade.
So we're going to pass it off to you, Adrian. It is open water now for Thomas Jefferson ahead of Western Washington and Embry-Riddle.
And just an amazing race here by Thomas Jefferson University. The last time they were at the national championships was 2019, where they finished 5th out of the 6 teams. So important to note, they are an at-large program that's here. So, you know, looking at the rankings nationally, Western Washington has a higher ranking right now, ranked 2nd in the nation. And then Embry-Riddle ranked 4th. But again, you know, there is a lot of cross-regional ranking or cross-regional racing amongst Division II. But Jefferson Rowing, I'm going to say a little bit of a dark horse here as they come into this race, but proving that they are a dominant force already with open water over Western Washington. Western Washington with several national championships, 8 at my last count, the last one coming in 2017. So again, Western, an indomitable force here in Division II rowing, doing a nice job, just not quite able to match the pace that Jefferson is throwing down here. But again, there is so much on the line in this race. As they come into their final strokes, only one crew will move on directly to that grand final. Right now, Jefferson looking to make that statement. And rest for the afternoon, Western Washington in those neon green visors coming across the line in second, with the University of Embry-Riddle, the aeronautical school in Florida, one of the top crews in the South, doing a nice job here, maybe conserving a little bit of energy coming into these final 100 meters. They were also finished 4th as a team in 2021, finishing both 4th in the 8 and the 4. So again, they will move on to the reps later this afternoon. The Sunshine State crew, Embry-Riddle, coming in 3rd in this second heat of the Division II 8s. Lane 4, Jefferson.
All right, going from a dead stop to as fast as possible in these fours. This is heat 1 of the Division II fours, the first of 2 heats, and our penultimate race of the morning here, day 1 of the 2022 NCAA Rowing Championships. Early on, it's the Gold Blades in the center from Embry-Riddle that have taken an early lead ahead of Seattle Pacific and Thomas Jefferson in that order at the moment. And they've already lengthened out, has Embry-Riddle. It was a very deliberate lengthen that I saw with my own eyes and is working for them because they continue to maintain a lead, maybe even move out more, Lindsay. And it looks like probably 3/4 of a length advantage already as they approach 250 for Embry-Riddle.
And it does seem that they are taking Seattle Pacific with them a little bit as they do break away from Jefferson, who we just saw had a fantastic showing in the 8s there. But it is Embry-Riddle who has come through to this regatta with an automatic qualifying spot, having been the top seed in their region of the country. And they are a Florida team, so they're familiar with the weather. They're certainly acclimated to the time zone, to the temperature, and certainly to the water, having potentially raced here more than once already this year.
Embry-Riddle open water now. So again, the winner of the heat will go straight to the grand final and will not have a third race at our championships. And right now, it's looking like early on, as we're not even at 500 meters, but it's looking like it's going to be pretty tough for anybody to catch Embry-Riddle, as they already have a length of open water, almost a little bit more than a length of open water on second place Seattle Pacific. Seattle Pacific with half a length advantage on Thomas Jefferson. And that's how they are going to look at 500 meters. I'm going to get a stroke rating on Embry-Riddle because it looks very, very controlled. And obviously now they are in a driver's seat position. with this type of lead at 34 strokes a minute. The coxswain in that boat, Lauren Enders, is going to have no clue where the rest of the field is other than, as we discussed before, the bow woman talking to her about it. Kristen Vigna is going to tell Lauren Enders every once in a while, hey, you know, we're still way out in front. Hey, it looks like we've got a couple lengths of open water. And they do. At 6:50, it is 2.5 lengths of open water for Embry-Riddle.
And you can see the bow woman that with the visor there in the Embry-Riddle boat, the rower closest to the coxswain, her blade's going very direct to the water, which is exactly what you want to see in your bow pair, especially as the boat gets smaller and smaller. The bow people are going to be the ones that are really going to help you stabilize the boat. And being able to help stabilize the boat means that you can get more out of your teammates that way, just by making it more comfortable, making their job easier. And by having such an impact over the stability of the boat by being so close to the bow, so close to the coxswain in this case, in this Cox 4, that is certainly something that allows crews to go even faster than they would otherwise. Rowing is incredible because it's not 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 = 4. It is, there are X factors that result. It's not about what can I add to this boat, but what can I add and what can I help my teammates get out of themselves by virtue of being here. And that's what you get when you get combinations and you get people that really know how to make boats go. Again, it's not just about what you add, but what can you get out of your teammates and what can you do together that makes you add up to more than 4 or 5 in this Cox 4, in the case of this Cox 4.
Embry-Riddle coming through the halfway point, the biggest lead we have seen of any boat to the halfway point so far this morning in all of these heats. It's Embry-Riddle by about 30 open meters ahead of second place Seattle Pacific. Seattle Pacific now with a full length of open water on Thomas Jefferson, so a fairly spaced out field. Another thing I want to mention about these coxswains being they lay down in the bows of the boat. Your eye line when you do this is about 6 to 8 inches off the water, and it feels like you're going a million miles an hour because you're so low to the ground. Imagine if you were in a race car and you were doing, you know, 200 miles an hour with your eye line a foot off the ground. You're going to feel like you're going 1,000 miles an hour, and that's exactly how it feels for these coxswains. It really is very exciting, but the advantage as well for these coxswains, they're all steering these boats, and the advantage of being in the bow of the boat is you're not having to look around the rowers to figure out where you are on the race course. You're not quite having to use the same peripheral vision that you would to stay in the center of your lane. You're just looking straight down the center of the lane, and you're able to make your adjustments as necessary.
Sighting it like a rifle. That bow ball goes right in between the buoys themselves. Just keep it right in the middle and you'll stay very, very straight down the center.
1,300 meters in, 700 meters to go for Embry-Riddle. They continue to maintain a 30 to 40 open meter lead ahead of Seattle Pacific. Seattle Pacific now has, they have opened their gap on Thomas Jefferson to about 2.5 boat lengths of open water. So a very spaced out field, one of the more spaced out ones that we have seen so far this morning in our penultimate race of the morning here, day 1 of our 2022 NCAA Rowing Championships from Nathan Benderson Park.
And with 500, 550 meters to go, this is certainly a confidence boost for this team out of Florida from Embry-Riddle, just staying very clean, very together the whole way down the course. And yeah, they're out in front, but they're working for all of their inches. And it's quite possible that you might see them just row it out the way that they are. You might see them take it up a little bit so that they can practice their sprint, because there is still another heat to go directly after this, and they have no idea what kind of speed is going to happen in the heat behind them.
And the only other boat that's not going to race a third time is whoever wins that next heat. So everybody else is going to have to race again. There's no real reason for Embry-Riddle not to try their hand at speed in the last 500 just to start to figure out where they are on the race course. We'll hand it to you, Adrian. Pretty spaced out. A huge lead for Embry-Riddle ahead of Seattle Pacific and Thomas Jefferson.
That's right, and this dominating lead coming out of Embry-Riddle, the Eagles, they were your Sunshine State Conference champions. They were here last year, and you know, just a dominating performance in the 4s all season. So this is the strength of their program, and they're proving that here with a several lengths of open water advantage over Jefferson. Jefferson also a very, very strong crew out of Philadelphia, formerly actually Philadelphia University. They repeatedly do well at the Dad Vale Regatta, one of the largest collegiate regattas in the country. So they just came off of some really strong wins there. So Jefferson just behind them. Again, as Lindsay and David talked about the strategy with these races where only one will move on to the grand finals. You know, it's good to put down a time that you can compare with the other heats, but at the same time, having to conserve a little bit of energy is important. So Embry-Riddle, again, well out in front, executing their race plan to perfection, looking really, really strong here with some excellent technique, nice long strokes as they move that boat very, very efficiently coming in to the final 100 meters here. So the Eagles looking very strong in this boat category. They get to take that afternoon off, retool, review, and come back tomorrow for the grand final. Jefferson also looking quite strong here, again, well ahead of Seattle Pacific. Seattle Pacific, also one of the top ranked crews here in Division II. This is their first time back at the regatta since 2019, where they finished 4th as a team. So Seattle Pacific looking to make a statement here, and again, putting down a good time so that they could again go back and retool for a strong performance in the reps this afternoon. So Seattle Pacific crossing now. And just one more heat for the afternoon for these Division II 4s. We'll come back with the lane assignments in just a few minutes. Okay, and the final race of the morning. This is the Division II 4s, heat number 2. In lane 2, Western Washington. Lane 3, Central Oklahoma. Lane 4, Mercyhurst. Racing will start in just about 2 minutes.
All right, we're on a race course. Heat 2 of the Division II fours, our last heat of day 1 of the NCAA championships here from Nathan Betterson Park. Good early start from that blue shell of Western Washington in lane 2. Trying to go with them there is Central Oklahoma. And if my memory serves me correctly, I think Central Oklahoma really blew Western Washington out of the water when they raced in this boat class some weeks ago. So this is kind of turning things on its head a little bit. Maybe Western Washington is going to try to get the early lead to sort of say, hey, we still got some speed here, Central Oklahoma. We've gotten faster since we last saw you. Those are your two boats out in front here at 250. There's a little bit of open water, then back to Mercyhurst.
As we saw in the eights, though, with Central Oklahoma and Western Washington side by side, it was Central Oklahoma who turned it on in the second half of the race, whereas Western Washington hung with them in the beginning, and then for the second half, it was that they just couldn't stay on the pace with Central Oklahoma as they came down earlier, that we saw earlier this morning. But as they lengthen out here, it's clear that these two crews want to go for that one top spot that goes straight to the grand final, whereas it's Mercyhurst who has fallen off the pace at this point in about 300, 400 meters gone in this 2,000 meter race. In this last race of the morning, the Heat 2 of the Division II fours. Being side by side like this, having the boat right next to you, it does make it kind of like a duel. Being able to see your competition, knowing exactly where they are, every stroke down the course gives you a different type of awareness. Hopefully you're just seeing seeing them in your periphery, hearing the boat, not peeking out to the side, because any peek that you take out of the boat can throw off the stability, especially in a four. It certainly also takes you out of your focus with what's going on inside your shell, because really the only thing you can do something about is what's going on in your own boat. So it's important that you stay dialed in.
So both of these boats that are out in front, to my eye, really type of rowing that can maintain itself throughout the rest of the race in terms of when the body's really starting to get tired. As Central Oklahoma really starts to kind of put the hammer down, they started at about 50 meters before the 500 meter point and have really started to move away from Western Washington. But I had them both at about 35 strokes a minute before this move came from Central Oklahoma. As we come through 750, it's going to be 3/4 of a length, almost a full length now for University of Central Oklahoma. The Broncos ahead of Western Washington Vikings. And getting into the mix here is Mercyhurst. So Mercyhurst was open water back from both boats, and now Mercyhurst has an overlap with Western Washington. And Mercyhurst may be the fastest mover of the three at the moment, to my eye, Lindsay, as they start to move here into the 850, 900 meter point of this race. In these fours, you can really change the boat speed with effort and with rowing. And will that start to happen? Mercyhurst, obviously, they did not front load their race, but they're starting to find speed now.
The incredible thing about this sport is that it is that little technical thing. Like, was something off maybe in the first stroke? Maybe they just, had maybe it was a fantastic start for them, but they just trust that their bread and butter is the middle of the race, their rhythm. Same with Central Oklahoma. They weren't first off of the line, but they were okay with that. They need to get the boat up to speed because it's a long race. It's not about the special teams. The special teams, that could help you out in a close race, but really what's going to make the biggest difference, what's going to build the confidence, is going to be the middle portion of the race. And I agree with you, David, that it is Mercyhurst that seems to have cleaned up what they're doing. They've come a little bit together, and they do seem to be moving the best out of the three crews right now as we are about to approach the last 750 meters of this 2,000 meter race.
So at Central Oklahoma, they have only a length. There may now be an overlap between Mercyhurst and University of Central Oklahoma, which means that relative to the first 500 meters in the last 750 or so, Mercyhurst has actually closed almost 2 lengths on University of Central Oklahoma, and Mercyhurst continues to close the gap. Every time they drop in the water, they're taking a couple of inches. 750 meters to go. University of Central Oklahoma still does look very composed. They are out in front, but it's only a 3/4 length lead now over Mercyhurst. Mercyhurst now with 25 open meters back to third place Western Washington, your early leader in this Heat 2 of the Division II fours. It's our last heat of the morning here, and Mercyhurst just keeps coming.
They clearly, the coxswain, whether it was the rowers, the coxswain, everybody together really wants that top one position that will take them straight through to the grand final. And there is still a lot of time left to be rowed here, even with the conditions giving them a little push down the course. You can see the boats bobbling around every now and again, but not really letting it get to them and take them off of their pace, off of their rhythm so much. But they have many strokes left to take, which will it be enough for them to nudge themselves in front as long as they stay composed together and patient here. They do appear to be a little perkier. The way that they're rowing is allowing them to be a little bit more effective, and which will only help them as they get closer to finish this race.
Almost dead level now. It's maybe a seat and a half for University of Central Oklahoma over Mercyhurst. As we pass it off to you at the finish line, Adrian, this is a dead level heat race now. Can Central Oklahoma start to shift the gear and find the pace, or is Mercyhurst just going to slowly get by them?
Exactly, and that third 500 was so crucial as Mercyhurst really turned it on here. You know, they don't emphasize the fours in part of their program. They really have emphasized the eights lately. They came off of an excellent win at the Dad Vales, and honestly, the last time they raced a four was May 1st. So it's been almost a month. I mean, they most likely practiced this boat, obviously, but the last time they contested was May 1st. So that's quite a while ago. So this tune-up as we come into the national championship, this is really important here, as Mercyhurst has just been a slow burn all the way down the race course, just chipping away at the lead that Central Oklahoma has established. Central Oklahoma, again, your defending champion. Mercyhurst, the last time they were out here, was the runner-up. So just as we saw in the eights, Mercyhurst out for blood. This is the how many times that Mercyhurst has been here. 17 times at the NCAA championships over the last 20 years. 5 times they've been the runner-up, including last year. And so right now, they are leaving absolutely nothing on the table. They do not want to have to come back later this afternoon. They want to go direct to that grand final. Veteran coach Adrian Spracklin, again, one of those coaches that just knows how to put it together with the right combination of athletes, and he's showing that here just like he did in the 8, coming across with that slow burn final. It would be Mercyhurst Lakers 1 length in front of Central Oklahoma. And then in third, it will be Western Washington. Ladies and gentlemen, spectators, fans, athletes, and coaches, thank you so much for being here on this first session of racing at the 2022 National Championships. We will be back at 3:48 p.m. for our first round of reps, starting out with the Division III second eights, followed by the Division I eights, and then finally the Division II eights and fours.